Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on probably the coldest night of the year. We've got one friend in the audience that braved the night and everyone else out on Zoom. So welcome. And thank you again for joining us on Saturday for our Super Saturday. We'll go over some of those questions tonight from the Board of Ed. The administration continues to work on the other questions that came in. So at this time, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, January 25th at 7:30 p.m. in the board room. So as I said, thank you all for Super Saturday. I think we got out a little early, which is always nice, but good conversation, good questions, and good information and feedback, much appreciated. The administration has worked hard over the last 2 days to organize the responses on some of the Board of Ed questions. We'll go over those this evening. And then we'll get out shortly to our partners' answers to their questions, and we'll proceed from there through the budget cycle. So thank you all again. With that, I will turn it over, Michelle, to public comment.
Good evening. Should we start with Zoom or in person?
We can start with in person, sure. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, that was a nice short wait. Sorry. Abigail Hornstein, I'm at 17 Edmund Street. Since I sent my typed comments to all the members of the board earlier today, and every economic concept that you might not be familiar with, I hyperlinked. So I think that those points were clear. So I'm going to go on an extension from there. I'm going to begin by referencing season 3 of West Wing, the TV show, in which there was a National Teacher of the Year. In the show, that was an English teacher. In real life, Mrs. Morello was the social studies teacher at Hunter College High School for about 50-something years. Her funeral was last week. I didn't go because of COVID, but hundreds of high school students went to see her. She made all of us educators. One of the things we all learned in her classroom was the importance of looking at things from different time perspectives. So when you're thinking about open choice or any of the issues you're thinking about, you're looking first from a very static single period perspective of the marginal benefit versus the marginal cost. The problem that you're facing is that marginal costs are tangible. They have a dollar sign attached to it and they show up as a line item in your budget. Whereas the marginal benefits tend to be intangible and are realized oftentimes decades later. And an example of that is the outpouring of support for Mrs. Morello last week and the fact that she was memorialized literally on MSNBC and the Associated Press as well. So what I want to point out is that we need to take a very long-term perspective. And one approach is to recognize that Darien is part of a much larger community of Fairfield County, Connecticut, and the United States. And that we need to think not just about the tax burden on us as citizens in a solitary period, but about the life cycle of our taxes as they affect each of us individually and our children. A current period transfer of educational resources to children from surrounding communities can deliver long-term benefits to society that mean that our lifetime tax burden through social services can be reduced. So if you are looking at open choice purely from a monetary perspective, the long-term approach, which considers the fact, like, I've got teenagers now. Someday they should be parents if they know what's good for them, because I know what I want. They want to minimize their tax burden as well. So I thank you for considering open choice. I hope you support it, not just because I think it's the right thing to do, but because it's the economically right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Anyone else from the audience? Sure, please come up to the podium. Thank you.
Sure, Dr. Fauci
Yes.
took his off today to speak, so I don't have a problem.
Thank you. It's just that my language is not so clear. Okay, Gabriella Chaya, Heights Road. I want to speak about the open choice program proposed to start next year. I do not support the open choice program as currently proposed to the board. I am speaking to you as a parent that has been in both school system, Norwalk, and now for over 10 years, Darien. My kids were in Norwalk school system where I felt comfortable because they were other immigrants, first generation's family like myself. And we had friends from a similar economic backgrounds. But my children were academically talented, and I did not feel like the Norwalk system was challenging enough. We moved to Darien solely for the high educational standards in this district. Although my children were born in the United States, I am not a native English speaker. My kids did not feel comfortable with us hosting playdates, even though we are Darien residents. And they were often embarrassed that their parents did not speak English well. The reason I'm telling you this is because we left a school system with the lower standards where we felt comfortable and had friends. In exchange, we entered a higher achieving school system, but we sacrificed our kids' social life, which is very important. What I worry about in a program like Open Choice is the emotional and social impact on children. I know they will get a good educational in Darien, but that's not everything. Kids also need to have friends and play groups and they feel comfortable, which that program does not give them. The children from Norwalk coming to Darien School will always feel like an outsider. I am speaking from my own experience. Children will compare themselves, who has the latest technology, the nicest clothes, who is popular, what do your parents do for a living? This will make the kids from outside of Darien School District feel like they are an outsider even more, which can lead to depression, weaker mental state, and worse, more conflict in a school district within Darien. People sending their children to school that are not residents of this town will feel more like not part of Darien community. Socially and mentally, this is a disaster for children. Please vote no for Open Choice. Thank you.
Thank you for coming
Can I
out
get
this
the
evening.
spelling of your last name? Sorry. Can you just spell it? Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, we will go over to Zoom.
Good evening. If you would like to speak during public comment, please click the participants icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Next, click the raised hand option. You will notice a blue hand icon appear in the upper corner of your screen where your face and/or name or number appears. When it is your turn to speak, the facilitator will identify you and announce that you are unmuted for public comment. Once recognized and unmuted, please state your name and address. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Mr. John Dunn, you are recognized and unmuted.
Good evening, John Dunn, 175 Raymond. Hartford's open
Mr. Dunn,
choice
can you hear
program
us? We can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
No,
Anything? Hold on.
He's unmuted.
you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
We can hear him on Zoom. That's interesting.
Okay. What would you like me to do?
Oh, we hear
Hold
him.
on,
good.
hold on. Everyone else, please stop talking. Mr. Dunn, please speak. Can we hear you?
Hear me now?
Yes, thank you,
Can you hear
Mr.
me?
Dunn.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Hartford's open choice program is the wrong choice for Darien students, parents, and taxpayers. I'd like to speak to some of the comments from the board members and the public that were made in support of open choice on Saturday. I fully respect your good intentions in supporting Hartford's open choice program. Good intentions can be limitless. However, Darien Public Schools' budget isn't limitless. It's limited. We are a small town and our resources are finite. And in my view, it does not make sense during a budget planning meeting to dismiss the importance of examining the long-term cost of this program. Part of making tough decisions as adults or elected officials is analyzing the cost of them. A board member said we are not doing this for financial reasons, but we are doing this for our children to have a more diverse experience. However, financial reasons still matter, especially during the budgeting process. We need far greater oversight by the board of Superintendent Adley, the agenda he's pushing on our town, and its long-term financial impact. Another common refrain was that open choice would increase diversity in our schools. But that is wishful thinking, as there is no guarantee open choice students would be a diverse group. After there are more applicants than available spots, open choice becomes a lottery. Who's to say that wealthy, white Rowayton residents wouldn't take advantage of this opportunity? They could avoid no public schools, skip paying private school tuition, and guarantee their children 13 years of excellent education in Darien at no cost. That move seems like a no-brainer. Who wouldn't sign up for that? Open choice doesn't guarantee diverse enrollment. Open choice is just as likely to result in seeing luxury SUVs with Rowayton sailboat bumper stickers at our elementary school drop-offs. And finally, for those Darien parents who fear their children are at a disadvantage in Darien schools, there's a very simple solution. Actions speak louder than words. Stand by your convictions and enroll your child in a Norwalk school via a magnet program. Hartford's open choice program is the wrong choice for Darien students, parents, and taxpayers. We need the board to call a special meeting to discuss this further. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Miss Tiffany O'Connor, you are unmuted and recognized.
Tiffany, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, I
There
think
you
I
go.
unmuted.
You got it.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thanks. Tiffany O'Connor, 48 Lee Warden Road. During the public comments of the September 28th meeting, I mentioned a few incidents of discrimination and hate that had taken place at Darien High School last year. There was already an urgent need for help and change when we learned about them last June. There have been several more acts of hurtful discrimination this fall, as we all know. Many other parents have shared their concerns with the Board of Education, as have DHS alumni and 4 current Darien High School students who shared their personal experiences along with those of some of their friends and classmates. While I genuinely appreciate the initial efforts to address the discriminatory behavior in our schools, I am concerned by the delay in moving forward with these initiatives. I'm surprised that the vote to transfer funds to hire DEI consultant Ken Shelton is not on tonight's agenda. Mr. Shelton has already been working with the students, and their feedback has been very positive, as Dr. Adley and Mr. Deneen have shared in previous Board of Ed meetings in the past 2 months. For months, I have heard students, parents, administrators, and Board of Ed members use words such as crisis and urgent. Students are hurting, and some are even fearful. Yet I keep hearing the word pause when it comes to getting the DEI help our schools need. Perhaps the well-coordinated misinformation about Mr. Shelton's role that has been shared repeatedly in public comments and on social media is contributing to the delay. False accusations regarding Mr. Shelton's role began with public comments before the November 18th Board of Ed meeting, before the meeting began, before we even heard what Mr. Shelton would be doing, before he was even introduced. One of the false rumors is that Mr. Shelton will get rid of grades in AP courses. At the November 18th meeting, Dr. Adley, a Board of Ed member, and Mr. Shelton himself clarified that his work in the Darien schools would not affect the grading policy or AP courses, which has been reiterated and clarified at almost every single Board of Ed meeting since then. Unfortunately, we also hear the false information in the public comments at every meeting as well. For the parents who are understandably confused, please know that the Board of Education has authority over grading, AP courses, and the curriculum. This is not the role of a consultant. The board, of course, fully understands these facts, and there is no reason for further delay. Students have bravely shared their experiences with you and asked you for help. Please show them you are listening, move forward with no more delays, and approve the budget transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Connor.
Amy Zerby, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear us, Amy?
Yeah, okay, yes,
Yep,
I am.
good. Go ahead.
Can you hear
Thank
me?
you.
Okay. Amy Zerby, 9 Morehouse Drive. I'm speaking to show my support for the Open Choice program. As I'm sure you already know, I am dissatisfied with the discussion that took place during Super Saturday. A year ago, our community was facing a surge in COVID cases, our children were learning remotely, our future was uncertain, and you wanted to push forward with Open Choice. This year, we are facing a surge in milder cases. Our children are learning in school. Our future is uncertain, and you are not in favor of currently pursuing Open Choice because you believe that we already have too many challenges. This attitude does not reflect who we are as a town. We are Darien. If we want something, we go for it and we get it done. As you know, a website and a document distributed by a Darien parent were created for the sole purpose of attacking the open choice program. This attack is like a neon sign flashing, "You are not welcome here," which again does not reflect who we are as a town. We all recognize that our schools are facing serious issues such as poor mental health of our students. I hope that you will find that we can still participate in open choice despite our current circumstances. Since you are concerned that open choice will inhibit getting our house in order, it makes sense for the administration to describe how the program would work operationally and whether or not we can pursue open choice without sacrificing the needs of our students. We do not have to rebuild the wheel, as open choice has been in existence for decades. At the same time, we can move forward with DEI and hire Ken Shelton to help improve our children's mental health. Looking at our enrollment projections, we do not appear to be bursting at the seams, so we have room to welcome open choice students for the next school year. 16 might not be the right number, but surely we can accommodate a few open choice students. Our tangible costs will exceed tangible revenues from the state. You need to determine if the intangible benefits are enough to offset the costs. I believe that they are. If you believe that open choice is as worthy as you say it is, approve open choice for Darien. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
User Bill's iPhone, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hello, Bill Lenich, 1 Siwanoy Road. I've participated in many of these board meetings over the past year or so. Dr. Adley has proposed many DEI initiatives for our schools. He's also assured us that these initiatives don't come at the cost of existing programs or services. He's assured us that DEI does not promote equality of outcome theses, which brings us to the open choice program being discussed. I'm opposed to this program. I can't state that any more plainly. It's ill-conceived. But rather than recite the ways I believe this initiative is fraught, I think it might be better that the board listen to Dr. Adley's own words. And keep in mind, Darien already spends $200 million a year in taxes to Hartford that are spent in other districts. Basically, Hartford bureaucrats hit the Powerball because of our hard work every year. When Dr. Adley was representing the Granby schools outside Hartford, he realized the program was financially untenable. This is how he described his experience in the testimony of the Education Committee on March 9th, 2009, a public record. Quote, "I am here to ask the state of Connecticut to fully fund the cost of magnet school tuitions and to support the Commissioner of Education's request to increase the subsidy that suburban districts receive for accepting urban students through the open choice program. The current level of state funding is not adequate to fulfill the constitutional, moral, and social obligations to the children of the greater Hartford region. We cannot continue to participate at this level of state funding. The costs are not incidental. As you know, the current level of choice funding is $2,500 per student. Granby's cost per student, minus transportation and special education costs, is $10,000. I am fearful that without adequate funding, equity of outcomes for Hartford students attending suburban schools will not be realized. Tuition expenses for magnet schools are now cutting into our existing programs and services. The funds that we receive through choice are not adequate enough to support the cost of tuition in magnet schools and simultaneously provide for an equal education for the Hartford students attending Granby through the choice program." End quote. So Dr. Adley's first-hand experience with this program 13 years ago was that each student cost the district $10,000 per year, not including transportation or special ed costs. Existing programs were damaged, services were reduced. Basically, the district was hurt, the budget was blown, the kids suffered. Notice also that the goal was equity of outcomes. This weekend, Dr. Adley assured us that the cost of Darien would only be $1,300 per student, an 87% decrease from 2009. I'm not sure how this can be true. If it is somehow possible, Dr. Adley and the board should present the data. Numbers matter. Good intentions are very admirable, but it is incumbent upon the board to deal with facts. I urge the board to listen to their constituents, heed Dr. Adley's warning and experience, and give these proposals the attention and the scrutiny they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Julie Plenichel, you are unmuted and recognized.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Julie.
Great. So I'm speaking to you today to also say my dismay about the fact that the vote for the budget transfer is not on tonight's agenda, and to implore you to make sure you add it to the January 25th agenda. When I asked my daughter today, Livy, if she wanted to speak tonight, she said no. And when I asked her why, she said, I'm just discouraged. And I agree with her. I am equally discouraged. She said, when I said that, she said, Mom, I really didn't expect anything different. This breaks my heart to know that when these 4 students came up and implored you to change the environment that is happening in their school, it is being met upon deaf ears. There is no action being taken to increase the safety and the diversity in our schools. In fact, I've actually heard from fellow parents that the bullying and the incidents are continuing and getting worse at the school while this is happening. Now you've all moved into budget season, and I know from past experience, this means the focus will also change to this. So what about now? What work is being done now to plan to change the learning environment to make it better and safer? Both Dr. Adley and Mr. Tranberg have brought you thoughtful proposals and answers to your concerns that were raised, and yet nothing has been done. In fact, the about to approve to transfer has not even shown up on anywhere in the January agendas. It just seems to be getting pushed back further and further. So you are allowing the brakes to be paused, to be pushed, and for this action to be paused. I implore you to please finally bring this to the vote and to vote to transfer the money to pay for this important work. It is now 2022, and we have an obligation to our children to make it a diverse, equitable, and inclusive learning environment. At the very least, we need to make it a safe one. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Miss Susie Flaherty, you are unmuted and recognized.
Ms. Flaherty, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. I was just trying to turn on my video, but for some reason I can't. Oh, wait, now I can. Thank you. Hi, good evening. Susie Flaherty, 6 Lake Drive. This is clearly a very emotional issue, this the decision to go forward with open choice. But what I want to talk about is what's happening now and what we've already done. The work here has already been done. I have looked into this and I've looked into past Board of Ed meetings that are a little more current, and everyone seems to think it's a good idea. And what I'm talking about board members, I'm talking about administrative officials, I'm talking about the public. We seem to all agree that it's a good idea, with the exception of the people that are jumping up now and are suddenly surprised about open choice. Numbers and facts certainly do matter. And the fact is that this program has been successful for decades. And we have been talking about it for, at least as far as I have researched, at least 2 years. And we cannot rely on people's projections of what they think is going to happen to other people and how they think others are going to react. We have to trust our kids and our schools to take care of each other. And I think the only way to do that is to provide our children with the advantage, the documented advantage of going to a diverse school. And what that does for our children, not only the kids that are coming to us, but our own kids. My only regret is that my children won't be here to take advantage of that. And I think it's important for us to look at what's real and not exaggerated and not inflated and not slogans and terminology that's picked and chosen to forward a certain point of view that doesn't jive with the actual facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flaherty.
Miss Teresa Vogt, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear us, Teresa?
You're not muted, Miss Vogt.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go. Teresa Vogt, 22 Circle Road. You guys well know I'm in favor of open choice, but listening to the second speaker who lived in Norwalk and came here speak, while I understand she is against open choice, her comment is why we need open choice. We're not a bubble, and we can't have people who are different from us, regardless of where they live, feel like they are less than us in some way because their parents don't speak English as a first language or their houses aren't as big as ours. Diversity is what makes us great, and diversity is what makes the United States great. I just don't understand some of the comments tonight against open choice. Diversity, there's something to be said for diversity over academics in terms of the value and the quality of the school system. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Ms. Sartori, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori. I live at 161 Old Kings Highway South. As a follow-up to some of the presentations on open choice, I did some research and I went onto the website of Cooperative Educational Services, CES, the organization or the nonprofit that would oversee the program. And what I noticed is that there's no representative from Darien on the CES Rep Council. And it is accustomed to have a representative from each of the districts on the Rep Council, and they can oversee what's going on. So I don't know if there's an oversight on the website that Darien has been left off, or whether there just isn't somebody who was willing to serve in this position. But I think it's very important to have someone in the position. Secondarily, I also noticed that CES is going to offer a workshop on affirming diversity and planning for equity. The workshop will be on February 1st at 8:30. It will feature professional development professionals, and including George Coleman, who is a former acting commissioner of education in Darien, and the cost is $75. So in case you didn't know about that, I think it might be worth looking into. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you, Clara.
Ms. Melissa Zawacki, you are unmuted and recognized.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Sure. Melissa Zablocki, Relihan Road. I strongly feel the open choice decision on the table needs to be further vetted before it's fully implemented. As a taxpayer and a Darien Public School community member, I'd like to see further information and data on the impact this may have on our school and town resources, both physically and financially. I don't think the costs presented to date are all encompassing, and I'm interested in seeing a detailed cost analysis on maybe a per student level with line items per se. We also need to take into account many of these children will need special support in school, and we cannot guarantee the program will reach these minority students intended to benefit the most. Darien is also going to be opening hundreds of affordable housing options over the next few years, which will bring more students and potential diversity into the community. This should be considered as well. There definitely needs to be more discussion on the benefits and risks of this type of program, including the plan to integrate these children into the community once they're here. We really need to map this out before we drag the kids into the plan and then have to change course suddenly. Otherwise, I really fear this will be one of these other failed attempts at a bus them in program implemented in the public school system so many times in the past. I honestly feel that right now, open choice is the wrong choice for Darien. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for speaking.
Peter McGinnis, you are unmuted and recognized.
Peter, we can't hear you. There you go. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. First of all, I didn't come to speak about this, but the second speaker, the former Norwalk resident, stated it so eloquently. I would also implore the board members to take a look at some academic research. The name of the substantial research is Open Choice Program, Helping or Hurting in the Long Run, by Dr. Samantha Sarley, who studied the Connecticut Open Choice Program, and the conclusions really support the second speaker. We're here looking at this as if it is so beneficial for our children to get diversity, but there is an impact on those students who are bused in, and that substantial research is something that I ask you to look at, September 23rd, 2020, from Northeastern University. I didn't come to speak about that. I came to speak about the process of this board. So there I applaud the choice to have a special meeting. There hasn't been a discussion in town on open choice. There hasn't been a board meeting. New Canaan has had it. Other towns have had it. We haven't had it. And now we find ourselves having this within the budget process. We did ask, parents did ask back in December for an all cost of this program. It was not delivered. So please, it's the board imperative to put the items on the table. And since we're talking about process, I'd like to go back to March 3rd, 2021, when the superintendent of this district lobbied the Connecticut General Assembly to pass this law. And I'm going to quote from the testimony submitted to the Education Committee. This was done without any public comment. It was done without any notice to the public. And the superintendent said specifically, talking about open choice and Senate Bill 886, I am speaking in support of the funding of the governor's budget for the potential expansion of the open choice program. I am the superintendent of Darien Public Schools, and I'm here to comment on Senate Bill 886. Currently, open choice programs are available in Hartford, New Canaan, Bridgeport regions. The governor's budget provides for 50 new students from the Norwalk area. Due to Darien's location and the significant bus transportation involved, Darien is presently precluded from participating in the open choice program. The expansion of the open choice program to include Norwalk and Danbury provides opportunities for Darien and similar districts in Lower Fairfield County region to participate in the program. The costs associated with open choice for the suburban towns
You're
are
at
not
time, Mr. McGinnis.
incidental.
You're at
I'm
time,
asking
Mr.
the board.
McGinnis.
Thank you. You have the
Thank you.
message. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Natasha Rose, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Natasha. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natasha Tomei. I live at 6 McLaren Road South. I want to thank Dr. Adley for increasing transparency and sending out a message in the superintendent's communication last Friday regarding the Saturday budget meeting, giving us a nice synopsis and some links to materials. That's very, very much appreciated. I want to bring up a budget item that might come down the pipeline. I was in touch with the CDSP today because I'm unable to attend their meeting tomorrow. I have COVID, but also as a working parent, it's tricky. And I've asked them to make their meetings available via Zoom so that more parents can be involved. And so considering that they're in the room that you guys are holding the meeting in right now, which is wired and capable of it, there might be a request. I hope that there is a request, given that the CDSP is hardworking members of the community, are very much in desire of inclusion and diversity. We would like this group that represents us as parents to actually be inclusionary and diverse. And so if there's something that comes down the, when we need somebody to assist with IT, that would be extremely helpful. So moving on to open choice. The open choice concept is different than the open choice program. The open choice program was developed by the state and has things that do not allow for us to ask for a income requirement, a minimum income, or ask for students of diverse backgrounds. And so because of these, because the program is a Hartford, a state program, not a program that we can modify at all, it does not ensure that we're going to get the outcome that we're looking for. So perhaps this is an opportunity to lobby Hartford, that we can say we are willing and able to do this. And let's go back to Hartford and say, hey guys, look, let's pay your fair share as well. Let's not leave the money, the additional money in Norwalk, and let's collaborate so that we make sure that we are getting, minority students. By the way, I looked at that paper as well, that thesis, which is very well done. And it cites what the second speaker and what Peter McGinnis just talked about. So there's some stuff that we need to look at beyond just, we can't sacrifice other students, for our kids to have diversity, at their expense. And the paper was written in 2020. So it's current and it's relevant. And And I also looked up, I went to this website today, openchoicewrongchoice.com, and found what other towns are doing. And it looks like Wilton's taking 2 students, New Canaan's having robust discussions about it. We know that the costs are not incremental. 17,300 households moved in.
You're almost at time.
Okay. Anyway, regarding Ken Shelton, I just want him to be a peacemaker. I hope he is. I don't feel like we have enough information, but we need a peacemaker
You
here.
are at
Thanks so
time.
much.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thanks.
Kara Gately, you are unmuted and recognized.
Kara, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Great. We can hear you now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my comment tonight, I just really want to speak about Darien Public Schools Policy 3125, which addresses competitive bidding both for general services and also for professional services. And I know the dollar amount that has been proposed for the DEI consultant to come in has changed over time. But I think what the important piece of this is whatever level of formality under the policy is required, given the dollar amount, is that there should be, or there should have been, I think, under the process or under the policy, a competitive bidding process with descriptives on deliverables and expectations on timing, and that more than one candidate should have been considered. I know there is a waiver process, and one of the reasons that you can get a waiver is if there's no other candidate available, which I have heard various members of the administration cite more than one time, that there's no one else. I've done some research on my own. I know there are some very qualified individuals who in fact serve on boards of nonprofits that actually implement and have programs so that underserved, minority, and students of color can attend our schools. They're on the boards of those groups. They are, people who serve as the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Yale Divinity School. I can name others who have served as consultants in a number of private and public schools in the area at comparable districts. So I think my concern is really about following policy and the process. And, what I think is important is that this policy is in place, as I understand it, to prevent taxpayer dollars being spent improperly and to have, accountability around the expenditures, especially around goods and services and the procurement of them with public funds, and that the deliverables are contractually based and that there was a competitive bidding process for it. So that's really my issue and concern. And if a waiver was in fact sought in this situation, was that the case? What was it based on? Who sought the waiver? I know under the policy, it has to be done in writing and signed by the requester and then approved by the superintendent or his designee. So I think I'm more concerned about governance and policy, and especially where it comes to taxpayer dollars, and that when taxpayer dollars are being expended, that there are deliverables that are measurable and that there's a competitive bidding process. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kara.
Ms. Carolina Magui, you are unmuted and recognized.
Carolina, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm trying to have some light so you can
All right.
see me, as I'm also at home with COVID.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted, I've sent you all my written comments, and I'm not going to read them tonight, but I just wanted to correct the record for Mr. McGinnis. I've sat and heard most Board of Education meetings, as I'm part of the RTM Education Committee. And this is not the first time that there has been a discussion about open choice. I believe there were 3 meetings where open choice was presented by Dr. Adley, and the CES people came to talk to us. And I also know for a fact that Dr. Adley went to Hartford to lobby for this program because the board asked him to do this. So this was not something that he just did out of the blue, and we've never heard about it. We have heard about it. I've sat in many meetings through Zoom because we haven't been in person there, and heard the presentations from Dr. Adley as well as from the CES people. So just trying to correct the record and giving some information for Mr. McGinnis and I believe Ms. Tomei, who assumed that there hasn't been any. Thank you. Have a good night and hope everybody is safe and sound.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Susie Flaherty, you are unmuted she has her hand raised again.
Yeah, Susie, if you've spoken once, we've got to get through everyone else and move to our agenda and then public comment at the end again. So who has not spoken?
Miss Armel Jacobs,
Thank you.
you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Armel Jacobs, 12 Fitch. Like Tiffany, I'm also surprised that the Ken Shelton vote got pushed. I was there last time to say, I want to move forward with this. I'm tired of pausing and taking steps back. So here again to say, let's move forward. It seems like the money is there, it's earmarked. It's just a matter of voting and getting the transfer approved. So I say we're tired of waiting. Let's move forward. I wanted to voice that. On open choice, I mean, I'm hearing a lot that, these kids from outside are going to have a lot of special needs and need special support, and they'll be ostracized and they won't feel like they're, the same, and they're going to need a lot of support. But honestly, that just feels so convenient because kids are already struggling with this, with all of these issues of feeling different in a town that doesn't support being different. They've come to you, they've said as much, and all these same voices who are like, oh, we need to support kids who have special concerns, then support them, show up for DEI. Don't try to thwart it, show up. These kids are already struggling in your own town, your own children. And you're not here trying to move forward with it. These same voices are doing the opposite or in support of the opposite. So I find it very convenient. And honestly, I'm a little disgusted if you couldn't tell from my voice. I guess at the end of the day, my message to the actual board members is, just when you're home, when you're brushing your teeth tonight, when you're looking in the mirror, I want you to ask yourself, I guess everybody who's listening, when you're looking in the mirror later tonight, getting ready for bed, ask yourself, is this a town that is inclusive and welcoming? And if the answer is no, you need to ask yourself, is that how I want it to be? Because if you do, then let's say no to open choice. Let's say no to DEI because we don't want it to be inclusive. But if you do want this town to be a welcoming place to signal that to people like me, then move forward. Move forward, because what I'm hearing now, the signal I'm getting is not, we want people who are different to feel welcome here. That's not the signals that this board and many of the people on this call and many people in this town are sending. So if you're not comfortable with that signal, you need to change the behaviors. There are many ways that it's been presented to do it, so follow through.
We're at time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Debbie Allers, you are unmuted and recognized. I apologize, I turned off your video.
Can you hear us, Debbie?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. I don't know if you can see me, but it's probably a good thing because it's late. So I am a huge supporter of school choice, a huge supporter. We have families in Darien who send their kids to Rogers or to the international school in Norwalk or to the technology school in Stamford. I think if parents want to send their children outside of the district, we should absolutely welcome children into our district if they want to come here. And for those who are concerned about growing up in a family with accents, I grew up in a family, I'm a first generation American, and friends would come over and had no idea what like my native German father was saying because of his accent. I grew up with friends who were first generation Americans, not a big deal. So I'm all for that. My second issue is with regard to Ken Shelton. I have seen some things that he has tweeted and that he has spoken about that are very concerning. I think that DEI is very important to the town of Darien and to every town. I did read that our neighboring community of Scarsdale, it took them a year to find someone who they found appropriate to head up a DEI initiative in their town. This is something very important to us, but I hope that we're not jumping into this too quickly just to have something in place. We need to do it right. Ken seems like a swell enough guy, but I don't think that he is a good fit for our town. He does not have experience on the East Coast. He does not have experience with a small community like ours. So I hope that we can find someone who would be better suited for that position. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Caleb Clark, you are unmuted and recognized.
Caleb, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Caleb. Continue. Thank you.
Caleb Clark, Half Mile Road in Darien. First, I'd like to just thank the board for all the hard work that you all been doing, whether it's on the budget or these critical issues that our schools are facing today in a very difficult environment that isn't always conducive to productive decision making. I did want to follow up on a comment when I heard it from one of the other speakers as I was listening in around the process for hiring Ken Shelton. And I think DEI is a critical initiative. It needs to be done right, and it shouldn't be shortchanged. And I am concerned that under the current process that Ken Shelton was brought on board, that the proper processes and procedures were not followed. And this is really a matter of, as I think the other speaker said, best practices from a governance perspective. And, regardless of whether or not he's qualified for the job or the best person for the job, it's important that the processes and policies, particularly around competitive bids, are followed. So, given the critical nature of this position and what we're going to be setting up in the long term is a DEI policy that hopefully will take us, in the next, decades to come. I think it's critical that whoever we hire was hired in the proper ways. And while it may not be the board's job to do the hiring, it is the board's job to make sure that the proper procedures and due diligence was done before dedicating funding to the position. So, I'd ask before any vote is made on the funding that, the proper assurances have been put in place that, the procedures and policies for hiring individuals, outside consultants were followed in this case. So thank you again for your time, and just want to make sure we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Doreen Godfrey, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Doreen Godfrey, 1 Red Mill Lane. I actually tuned in tonight and was going to speak to something else, but I heard the statement and that certain slogans and terminology are chosen to push an opinion. And that really struck me because somebody said we need to trust our kids and we need to trust our schools. But the slogan and the terminology that's constantly being used is safe. Our kids don't feel safe. And it leaves me to wonder what's going to make our kids feel safe. As another parent stated, we are not a bubble. But that's exactly what we're trying to create, this safe bubble with the perfect mix of what we want to control with open choice and a little bit of diversity, but not too much. But that the open choice doesn't even guarantee that that'll happen. And by the way, that's not reality. Can we please recognize safe is not reality? If you want, as a parent said tonight, diversity over academics, there are many places you can go for that. I can personally recommend places that I went to in Queens, New York, that I went to school. There is diversity over academics. Ken Shelton is not the answer to make your kids feel safe. Do you even know what he's going to teach our teachers or teach our students? That has not been clearly communicated to us as parents. And just the way the opinions for either side of an argument don't represent the whole town of Darien or every single parent, neither do the opinions of a handful of students. I am not opposed to DEI. I'm opposed to Ken Shelton being the one to make our kids feel safe. Let's move forward with the right person and the right program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Godfrey.
James Palin, you are unmuted and recognized.
Yes, it's Jim Palin here, 5 Hickory Lane. I would just ask the board as they begin to have a special meeting here to discuss, the policy decision to begin open choice, that, to the extent they feel like the schools have excess capacity in the short, medium, or even long term, that in connection with thinking about open choice, also think about programs that we see at other schools where, to sometimes fill that excess capacity. Sometimes teachers are sometimes allowed to allow their children to attend the school. So to the extent you really do think that we have short and medium term excess capacity, we should maybe think about that as a policy as well as or an exchange of the open choice program. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Barry Palmer, you are unmuted and recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the board for the opportunity to speak tonight and how privileged I feel to teach in your community. I just wanted to speak to the safety issue of students, and I just want to make sure everyone's focused on the experiences our students have had in the community, not just this year, but some of the things that have come out that have been going on for years in the community. And I wanted to remind people, swastikas have been found in the school, almost monthly this year. I mean, we had students getting full soda cans thrown at them just because of their sexual orientation. That is something we cannot be complacent about. The policy decisions are not that's not my lane. That's up to the board and the administration to decide on. But I just don't want us to be complacent and accept what's been going on in the community as a status quo, because this is the best district in the state. And, it should be the best district in the state in every single aspect. And I just don't want us to lose that focus. Thank you.
Hey, Barry, could you just clarify your role, please?
DEA president of the Teachers Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry, and thanks for speaking.
Yep.
Krista Carnes, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi there. Apologies for the dressed down look. I just wanted to say that I think there's been so many arguments about this issue that we're getting away from the basic philosophy. We are either an excellent academic district, and bringing in new voices and new perspectives can only benefit us if it's done in a measured, reasonable, financially sound way, which it sounds like this is doing in other parts of the state. I think a rising tide lifts all boats, and the people that would be choosing to put their kids into this lottery, that would be making sacrifices on their own end in order to be part of our community of education, they deserve a chance. And their commitment and their desire to be part of what we are creating here is valuable, and it is valuable to our current students to see that and maybe bring a little healthy competition at the same time. With regards to DEI, all these arguments just keep getting the ball punted farther and farther down the field. And I take offense from to Dr. Adley that people are impeaching his character and thinking that he didn't do very thorough research on different people out there. It's an immediacy thing. We can always hire another consultant down the road. What Ken Shelton is going to do is going to help us now, and it's going to help Livy Punishell feel like people are listening to what's going on, to the circumstances that Barry Palmer is mentioning, that these kids are like scared. And safety, if you don't believe safety in a school environment, in our public education system, isn't of value and worth investing in, to audit it and figure out what we can do. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be that much, but let's just show them that we try. Because if you keep punting on one issue, that's all they see. So I encourage you to take action, and so that we can move on and start doing things to get it done. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carnes.
There are no more raised hands at this time.
All right, Michelle, thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to join the meeting this evening and speak. Thank you. We will move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your participation. Is this on? It doesn't sound on. Is this on? It is on. Thank you. Thank you. Just a word of appreciation to our staff and to our parent community for accommodating the return to school. Happy New Year officially to everyone. But we returned to the spread of COVID, the continued spread and increase of COVID and climate weather. I hope as a wee silver lining that students and family members had an opportunity to enjoy one of the real snow days this particular week. As the result of the two related snow closing days, the current last day for students is Wednesday, June 15th. We'll revisit that obviously, but that's kind of currently where it sits right now. January 14th, on Friday, is professional development. It is a remote day of professional development. All presenters are presenting remotely. Ken Shelton, just for the record, will be here as part of the funding for this year, and he'll be working with our teachers and on facilitating DEI conversations with students in their classrooms. TC will be here for our 1st and 5th graders. There'll be professional learning on the new IEPs that are being implemented throughout the state, ruler for social emotional learning, and then team time. Friday is also makeup day for Henley. So there'll be an early release for Henley, and then they will go into the staff later in the afternoon. After the early release, we'll go into diversity training. I want to congratulate middle school Wordmaster Challenge. That's part of the IDEA program. Several of our teams, Darien IDEA students, achieved the highest honor. 7th grade was 2nd in the nation. 6th and 8th grade were 3rd in the nation. And the 5th grade team were 10th in its division. We offer them the congratulations. Only 94 middle school students achieved this particular result, similar to Darien. And also, we have one of our students, you may have read, Darien elementary student wins an international piano competition. Christopher Lee, a 4th grader from Henley School, came 1st place in the 2021 Piano Star International Competition. We're going to have to see this, bring him to a board meeting or something. The event was live streamed in December. Christopher competed against 37 players from 13 countries. I share this with you because it's touching. Christopher credits his Henley music teachers for inspiring him. That's what we want people to do in our mission, to inspire people, and dedicated his performance and victory to his grandfather, who unexpectedly passed away in 21. And in his own words, Christopher said, "My grandpa is the most loving person I know. I know he can hear me whenever I play." Not much more you can say there. Congratulations to Christopher. The robotics clubs, 12 of the clubs are up and running at the moment, and they're meeting weekly. Just a reminder that the policy committee meets tomorrow morning. There'll be no facilities committee. Finance is Thursday, January 20th. And I'll share that then at the 25th meeting, the recommendation for that transfer comes before the board. Curriculum meeting is January 27th. There is on Wednesday, January 26th, 7:30 at Staples High School. If anybody and members of the board, is open to all members of the board for CABE legislative breakfast for this particular region. And you can see that advocating for more funds for open choice is not mutually exclusive from participating in it. But if you want to join us for that particular morning, it's a 7:30 start. I'll send out additional information. And we're obviously closed on Monday, January 17th, in honor and recognition of the contributions of Dr. King. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. We'll move on to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes of the regular meeting held on December 14th, 2021, minutes of the special meeting held on January 6th, 2022, and minutes of the regular meeting held on January 8th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve, Mr. Maroney, second by Mrs. McCammon, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to board committee reports. I don't think there are any board committee reports. There was also a regular meeting of the Oxbridge Building Committee on Thursday at 10 o'clock. We'll move on to presentations and discussions. Darien Public School update, Dr. Adley.
Okay. The board has an updated chart. COVID dashboard has been updated to look like this. So it's in front of you this evening. That replaces the one that you have in your packet. And coincidentally, last week, Final Site, our provider for the website, unfortunately, was down, as it was down across the state. So this it's now up. This is posted on a nightly basis. Today we had 21 cases, 13 were vaccinated, and clearly since we have come back, a lot has happened since last we talked about this. From over the holiday period to every day. Right now, I just received new guidelines, like literally 5 o'clock this afternoon from CIAC in terms of their new guidelines. So there's things happen at a pretty quick clip. I want to thank the medical team again for continuing to meet, be responsive to these. So the COVID metrics, you can see now how we are reporting the metrics. Part of this is because the contact tracing is not necessarily taking place. The level of contact tracing that we're doing is we are sharing with parents, primarily actually solely at the elementary school level, if students are reported as cases in their particular classes. There seems to be like one town up in is that Cornwall or Canaan? I guess Canaan, isn't it? I don't know what they're doing, but it's coming their way, I think. So this is. I mean, the cases are pretty pervasive at this particular point. You sense it in your own community. We all have a sense of it. So we're trying to take the precautions as best we can. There are some very encouraging things that have happened, but I'll just give you the result, the sort of feedback, first of all, just on the metrics. So this is from the town. And then I'll just go back to speak to these particular issues at the moment, because that's where they all are. So test kits over the holiday period, primarily, or just when we come back, we got a little over 3,000 kits. So they are at the various schools, and staff members, students, parents who suspect their students are symptomatic and certainly can pick those up, and that has been taking place. Masks, we have received 10,000. Currently, we've distributed 10,000, basically 10,000, about 9,000 something, 10,000 masks to the schools, N95 for their adult masks for staff members who may need them. We have just acquired another 10,000 today. So we'll be distributing those out. Essentially, those masks can last 2 or 3 days if you put them in a paper bag to dry out type thing. So we have those on task, and we're actually we're scheduled to get essentially another 3,000 test kits. When we get those out, we don't know, because literally we're getting close to a day's notice that they've landed somewhere and it's time to pick them up. But that's encouraging. We also learned relatively today, we don't know the implementation of it, that full PCR testing could take place for anyone in school, students or otherwise, who are vaccinated or unvaccinated. And that's honestly, I'm not sure how we're going to do that, to be honest with you. That's a huge, just imagine, I don't know, all the kids in the high school or like hundreds of kids and maybe 200 kids in the high school want to get this on a particular day. So we have the diagnostics that come in once a week to do over 200 kids. Now it's open to anybody who wants to do a PCR. They'll do a PCR test for vaccinated or unvaccinated. That we got that information. There was no meeting today by the state. We're not quite sure of the logistics of that, but we'll share that with parents. But we'll have to sort of like take a day or two to work through some of the logistics of that, because they just are logistics of it. The quarantine and isolation testing and contact tracing. So those relatively changed over the holiday. So we went to the 5 days following the CDC. The contact tracing dissipated. The state came back and said that the time on task for that wasn't really the cost benefit analysis just wasn't there at this particular point. That's at least something that they listened to, because that was one of the things that we relatively asked for. The isolation and testing, well, I've spoken to that a little bit of the changes that have taken place here. We have had, as of today, we met with the medical team, and I should share with the board that the ELP, a couple of the ELP classes, we are going to extend that to the 10 days for ELP, because it's literally impossible for those kids to keep their masks on, just given the age of them and the activities that they participate in, and just developmentally, and they're not wearing masks, consistently by any means. And so for that particular class, we're going to go for those particular students, we're going to go to back to the 10-day. CIAC just came out with guidelines that are basically replicating the current guidelines that we do for the 5 days, and then take the test, 6 day, come back without symptoms. So we will put that in place as quickly as we can, but we just received those. So if there's anything else we need to do there, we'll have to review, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't go along with those particular guidelines. And so the return to athletic protocol would happen after the 5 days also. Visitors, spectators, I know this continues to be a challenge, but given that we're trying to limit the groups, I think we're trying to work with schools in our local area too and be consistent with those, and we are consistent with those. So there are times where maybe somebody will be in the building, and there are times where we have to say no to those particular situations, and the same sort of for the spectators. Guidelines, they're back, but wearing masks for any of the indoor activities for the sport, but I think we basically knew that to this point. So those are a couple of the change in landscapes. I'll stop there. I don't know if I see Alicia or not. Is Alicia on? No.
I'm here.
Oh, you are, Alicia. Okay. So that's the basic summary. I'll leave it at that and open up for questions for either Alicia or myself.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. Mr. Sini.
Alan, can you confirm that the spectator policy is a local policy? No.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what's the off ramp on that one? What are you looking for to reinstate the ability of the kid to have our students have, a true fan experience?
We're just doing the two-person, the two adult, essentially the two-person participation, which is consistent with all the local schools.
Right. So what are you looking for in the data to allow a true fan experience?
I'm just trying to limit the true fan experience.
To get back to normal in the stands. I mean, only a few weeks ago we had thousands of people at football games in close proximity. Granted, outdoors, but
yeah.
So what are you looking for? What is the medical team looking for to allow? Is it cases per 100,000? What is the metric?
I honestly right now with the way this thing is rampant, I can't give you one. Look at those. I mean, just look at Mr. Sini, just look at those numbers. Look at what's happening in society at the moment. All I'm trying to do is limit the gatherings as best as possible, to limit the spread as best as possible. I'm not the epidemiologist.
No, I understand the goal. I'm trying to get what are you looking for in the back end? Is it cases per 100,000?
I can't say that. I can't say the cases per 100,000 is the case. I think once we hear from the state, once we hear from the states, the epidemiologists, that things are decreasing. We've done this before. We've gone from everybody there to 2 people to back to everybody, and now we're back to 2 people. I don't know if it's really straightforward as that. I think I would piece together different metrics and not just that particular one. But Alicia, I don't know if you have any comment on that or not. Or you don't have to, that's fine.
I don't really have a comment. I think it's, I think right now when we're seeing, today was a better day as far as the numbers, but I think we have to wait and see over the next few weeks how this transpires, and to see if this spike is decreases and we're just not seeing the same kind of spread that we're seeing. I think we're just seeing a lot of community spread and a lot of spread among, in our schools. So decreasing the opportunity for that is kind of the goal right now. So
If
I
the
don't know,
case,
maybe in the next few weeks, we'll be able to revisit it and see that the numbers are going down. You know, today's numbers were encouraging, I thought, so.
if the cases go down, this is not like something like indefinitely. I mean, if we see the cases going down, we would be and have been one of the first to make a change.
Can I just ask one follow-up? Have we seen any hospitalizations in this latest wave of any of our school community?
I think it's been pretty clear that the acuteness and the hospitalizations haven't been as significant.
Significant or
Have not been.
any? Do we know if we've had any in our community?
I don't know about our own community, John. I'm just giving you.
I'm sorry, our school community.
I'm just giving you. I'm just giving you sort of feedback from the medical advisor and what he's seeing at Stanford hospitals.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Duke. Alicia, you just said that the data, and I was looking at earlier, you sent out the email before the meeting. I think we had 21 cases, 13 of which had been vaccinated, so ballpark 2/3. I know we have people doing mitigation strategies with masking at 6 feet, but you also mentioned scenes for having spread in the schools. So I know this is only one day's data, but if we're doing all these things to prevent spread and it's still spreading, any thought maybe the data could drive a decision not to do these things that don't seem to be working? And it may be a question for Dr. Kennefick. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think the difficult part about that is that a lot of the decisions that we follow are made at a higher level. They're made at the state level and based on things that come from the CDC. So, you know, until the state allows us to remove masks or the state allows us to change some of the things that we do, we're kind of held to that standard. You know, I think that they are recognizing that it's spreading quite rampantly, and the difficult thing is, you know, I do think it's happening in school, but it's happening everywhere in the community as well. So it's really hard to pinpoint exactly where somebody is getting COVID. And I do see that, you know, I think you can look at the data and say, well, even vaccinated people are getting COVID. That's true. But the part that you don't see and that's difficult to quantify in things that we send out are the symptoms that people are having. You know, vaccinated by and large, the people that are vaccinated by and large are not having significant symptoms, but we are seeing other people get really sick. As far as hospitalizations are concerned, I don't think that we've had a school member hospitalized for, you know, they've been to, but we've seen them go to the ER. I don't know if they've spent a night in the hospital, but we have sent and have seen people in the ER as a result of COVID. So and I think that those numbers tend to lag as far as with infection. So we kind of have to wait and see over the next few weeks to see how things go. I do know the hospitals are starting to get burdened with COVID cases at this time.
And just a quick follow-up, sorry, and you may not know, so again, apologies, but to Dr. Adley's point, to yours with the hospitalization and Mr. Sini's question, I guess we may not have any idea, but if people are going to the ER, maybe they're just going to get tested or whatnot, but I don't know if anyone's having like acute requiring stays in the hospital, or do we have, I guess the bigger question is, do we have any idea of those people going because whatever cause, or do we have any idea what the breakdown is between vaccinated and unvaccinated?
I don't know the answer to that question.
No problem. It was a tough one. I didn't think you would off the top of your head.
Sorry.
Val, can you find Tara Worm so we can have her up there? I just want to make sure I capture all hand raises.
She's there.
I don't see her in front of me. If you can get her up on the screen, that would be great. Thank you. Mrs. McCammon. There we go. Thank you.
On the EOP question, I certainly understand that's a community with a lot of or potentially with more medically fragile people as a relative basis, and your point about masking. But I also know, having done it, that putting a preschooler on remote learning is extremely difficult, and that putting a young child with a lot of needs on remote learning is extremely difficult. Is there anything that program needs to make these quarantines more successful? 10 days is a long time, even though, I certainly understand.
So in all transparency, that decision was made today, and tomorrow we'll huddle together to see if there are any is there anything that we either need or anything else that we can do to provide support for people in those positions?
Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? All right, good. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us as always.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you. We'll move on to curriculum update 2022, Mr. Chris Tranberg.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to spend some more quality time together in such a short period of time. So I have a curriculum update tonight. So the plan for our newly established board curriculum committee is over the course of the year to have a breakdown by department of what the priorities are. Because we started at the midpoint, this is just a bit of an accelerated version of what we're working on specifically with curriculum. So this not only represents the rest of the FY22, but what we might look ahead toward when you look at the budget proposal for FY23. As I mentioned on Saturday, K2 literacy is a big focus. So there's also a textbook request that is in the budget. And this goes back to the science of reading, which is an age-old debate that I'm sure that you've heard about many times. It came back really during the pandemic, front and center. So some of the shifts that we're looking toward in the curriculum is more attention to phonemic awareness instruction. As you might know from the last shift that happened in literacy instruction was away from that. And so this is trying to find a balance that allows for that to happen. So those new units of study, they welcome the work that we're doing with foundations and Haggerty, and find a place for that within the actual units of reading instruction to really place more of an emphasis on embedding phonics within the unit and more focus on the print itself. And this just goes back to the research that has materialized over time now that there's really 4 decades of high quality research on reading. The science of reading now actually is the science of reading. We know a lot more about what it takes for students to learn to read. So that's the focus area. Obviously, we're still looking at math and science and social studies with elementary, but I think this is going to be where our focus is as we prepare for the next school year. With mathematics, not too much dramatically has changed in secondary mathematics instruction, but we are working on trying to create those common experiences for students and courses. So no matter who they have along the way, they're having a similar experience and they're prepared with the same knowledge and skills to do that work. So when we talk about the 3 phases of learning of a unit, we're really thinking about the learning plan phase 3 of what can we do to provide more differentiated experiences for students. And feel free to slow me down anywhere. I'm just going to go through and happy to circle back.
Just go through it and then we can come back.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Chris.
So with English, we have some new courses that we're looking forward to developing the curriculum for, and that's the digital journalism, which is the new hybrid course of in-person and virtual, and the literature of New York City. We're also looking at integrating vocabulary. So we're going to look at 6th grade first with frequent words that students should know and think of ways to embed them. And then for SBAC preparation, trying to embed those preparation opportunities throughout units of study, so it doesn't feel like we're pressing pause when it comes time to be studying for and preparing for a test. With science, we are still very focused on NGSS. Those standards are not all that new, and we still have quite a bit of work to do all the way through the secondary level. And we're also focusing on alignment of our biology, chemistry, and physics classes at the high school, and looking forward to developing that STEM design and innovation class that was not approved this year, was actually approved the previous year, it just hasn't run yet. With social studies, this was the pilot year for the Black, African American, Puerto Rican, and Latinx studies class. It is a full year course. We're required by the state to offer it. The board approved it 2 years ago. So this was the first year it was run. We were not able to run the full course, but we did run the first half of the course, which is the portion that focuses on Black and African American studies. Moving forward, the state is requiring it to be a full year course. So there's obvious concerns. It's very hard for students to decide what electives they're going to choose. And this would be a full year lock in their schedule. So we're going to see how that goes, but we will offer it. As I mentioned, there's also some new social studies standards that we are going to be looking at. These are more content focused standards that are supposed to overlay the current social studies framework that was adopted in Connecticut in 2015. So we are excited to see what that looks like. And there is also new legislation regarding the requirement of teaching Native American studies in Connecticut. This is not a course. This is similar to teaching the Holocaust, where it needs to exist somewhere in the course of studies. We will see where that fits best. With world language at the elementary level, they're working on integrated performance assessments, which I'm realizing now is abbreviated IPAs, which is probably not the best of the acronyms we've come up with. They're also working on their can-do statements, which is really a focus on the specific learning targets. And for the new courses at middle school, we have Mandarin, as well as the new AP Spanish course. So we have curriculum preparation coming for that. Our tech is about new courses, as well as the vertical alignment of courses from the middle school to the high school, especially related to technology engineering, and hopefully a new thread of robotic study. And finally, for the music department, we're looking closely at the K1 music curriculum. There's been professional development for that team all year, and that is not a typo. It is tuneful, beatful, artful, not supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be about students' awareness of beat and instilling an innate sense of beat in them, and also updating scope and sequence. And the exciting piece that they're looking at is, that might look strange, embedding STEM units of study within music courses at the high school. One of the challenges that we are experiencing is students are required a STEM credit, and they're having a hard time getting it to based on their elective choices. So we're going to look at the possibility of creating units of study for students to earn a technology credit within music. So looking at the recording, the digital aspects of that, which will be something that we bring to the board when it's developed for your approval. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Tranberg.
Anyone that's been left out, it doesn't mean they're not working on something. These are just some of the highlights.
Great, thank you. Mrs. McCammon.
On the K2 literacy, we did a lot of work with foundations to implement phonics. Can you spend a little bit more time explaining why this is needed on top of the work that's already been done?
Yes, so I've been asking the same questions as well. So the way that foundations instruction works now is it's part of the day, and students have the foundations time in their learning. And then when they have readers workshop, it's time for reading. And the two don't really live at the same time. This is about the opportunity for application of the strategies and tools that they're learning to actually be applied, which we know is an important thing to do that application. So the new units of study provide that opportunity. And if you've ever seen the way that they work, they're pretty scripted as to what the teaching points are, what happens next. And there isn't space for the direct instruction of where does phonics fit in. And this is a more intentional way to do that, which will be very helpful, very connected to what we know about literacy development at this point as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Achman.
So I'm just a little confused on process because I have lots of questions and I know we have budget tonight, so I don't want to keep us here all night. But this presentation is prior to a curriculum committee meeting, so will we get a chance to go in depth on this and then I'll save my questions, or do you want them all now? I'm asking the chair and the super and Mr. Tranberg.
Go ahead.
I think you certainly can discuss with the chair, and something we can put these on. That's fine. This is just a general overview, so it's not exclusive of coming through the curriculum committee. Honestly, if you feel that they should.
No, I'll hold my questions in the sake of time. But if we're not going to see this, then I want to again. Like I have questions on social studies and Western Civ and where we overlay and can we make changes in Native American? Does go to U.S. history? I just am. If we're going to do this again in the curriculum committee, I'll save them for the same time. If we're not, and there's a different plan,
we're going to go into more detail in the curriculum committee. In the meantime, these are just some of the things with the units that, again, it's the units that already exist and what we're doing to update for right now. But as we move through with curriculum committee, the plan is for each department to have an opportunity to go into depth.
The
But because, sorry.
I was gonna say, the initial schedule that was sent out has a area of study
Correct.
per meeting that we will go into. Okay.
We just missed so much of the year that I didn't want, there's no way we're going to get to every department before the end of the year. And with the call for transparency, I wanted to make sure it was clear that these are the things that we're working on. Some of them represent shifts, and anything that requires approval will go to the curriculum committee first and obviously to the full board.
Okay, so then maybe let me just run through a quick list of things to highlight, and you don't have to have answers now. I think in social studies, if we can get some answers on how the overlay is affecting our courses are pretty dense. And are we looking to modify any of them? Where we're fitting in the new courses? And then on math, we talked a little bit in the budget about math and focus, kind of where we are with that and how that's going. With STEM, I know a few years ago, we added more courses to alleviate the concern that children didn't have enough options during elective. If that didn't alleviate the problem, is that because of scheduling or because we're still short on courses? And then I have some K2 questions, but we can get into them, I guess, at curriculum.
Good, Mrs. Parent.
So I have K2 literacy questions, but they're also budget related questions. I would love more clarity on what exactly the new requirements are from the state. I mean, I think, literacy has been such a pendulum for decades, and they're definitely swinging back towards the phonemic awareness aspect of it. But I would just love to know what the new requirements are.
Mr. Brown.
Two questions, I'll keep it high level, both regarding math. We had on the social studies slide, the Connecticut Council for Social Studies and CSDE is changing standards for math. Who provides the standards? I'm guessing it's more than one entity, and just trying to get a sense of where that comes down. So if you provide that in the meeting going forward, that'd be awesome. And then on the mathematics slide itself, bullet 3, we're talking about productive struggles. I'm very familiar with struggles in mathematics, but not productive struggles. I was just wondering what that meant.
Productive struggle means
I have
after the struggle, you're able to succeed in solving the problem. But going through the exercise and effort to figure it out before resorting to clues and assistance before working toward the answer.
Thank you.
I would make the recommendation, put yourself through a predictive struggle, right? Anyone else? Anyone else on Zoom? Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Tranberg, thank you very much. We will move on to update on implementation of district strategic plan. Dr. Adley and Mr. Tranberg.
So this is the quarterly update on the strategic plan. Again, the way this is structured is each of the goals and the strategies that are listed for years 1 to 5. It might be in year 1, or it might be in year 1 to 5 somewhere, or 1 to 3. So we've listed those. Will be consistent in how we report out. We have kept in the October update, and Mr. Tranberg, just going to touch with your understanding. We're not going to go through all of these. We're not going to read all of them. It's in your packet. We will just literally touch on maybe a highlight of one as we go through each of the strategies and just highlight on one. So that's what we'll do. So with that, we'll start off with goal 1.
Right, and again, I've picked some that I think are relevant to the conversations that we've had and where we focus some time. So I'll go through each of them, and glad to circle back wherever you'd like. Under goal 1, enhancing teaching and learning, and strategy 1A, and also connecting to the work that we've done with Gifted and Math Acceleration. Members of the Math Acceleration Committee completed their first learning walk where we looked at math instruction at the elementary level. I will say in general, a theme throughout this update is time has not been on our side, because we've not been able to gather together to do some of the work that we need to do. Some of that includes doing some site visits in other districts. Other things include bringing a large group of people together to get the work done. So yes, you might say, well, why don't we use Zoom like we use for everything else? I don't think we'd have the level of productivity that we need to get the work done. So it's pushed a little bit later, anticipating we'll be able to get to some of that.
I just also mentioned, if I can, sorry, Chris, don't mean to interrupt, but some of our site-based in-person PD has been, particularly the last week or so and this week, it's all hands on deck. So some of the professional development had to be honestly canceled to keep school open. So we struggle with that. Right, Chris.
An update under 1B, we have our 5th grade teachers were working on a social issues book club unit of study, which is coming in reading, where students will work in book clubs and they will choose a book that's based on a social issue and work on having conversations with each other through that issue. And social issues could be related to income disparity, could be related to race, could be related to learning differences. These are all grade appropriate books that students would encounter. And we're working with the teachers to help them feel prepared to do that work successfully. We also are focusing our continued work with Teachers College and our staff developers. We've taken a bit of a different approach this year to try to give teachers more choice in what they're participating in, and I believe that's been well received. Mr. Brown.
We're talking about Columbia Teachers College
Yes.
or Connecticut or others.
Columbia's Teachers College, yes.
Thanks.
That's the Readers and Writers program, Readers and Writers Workshop. Under goal 2, I'll just highlight ruler. That's been a big focus this year. And as you know, it's a focus for the teachers to do the work. And the idea is once they go through the work and they build their charter, they'll be able to replicate that next school year with students. Under 2B, we are, this is one of the pieces that we are very much waiting to do in person. And that would be the launch of the DEI committee. There's benefit to being together in the same space when we are doing that work. So we are ready to go as soon as the world will let us do that. Under goal 3, the vision of the graduate is underway, and we're working on, the high school is working on establishing a district-wide team, because it's not just the high school vision of the graduate, it is representing the full district. The other thing that we are doing to make sure we are making sure those skills and attributes exist within the curriculum starting in kindergarten is embedding those within our actual curriculum unit. So this summer will be the first time we have the opportunity to do that. As we look at expanding the professional capacity of staff, we continue our work with Dr. Marilyn Friend, who has been on site several times this year. I've had a chance to see some of her work focused on the elementary teachers this year. And we've also worked on our really onboarding our new elementary assistant principals who've just been wonderful. Kristen O'Reilly has spent time with them. They are a wonderful addition to our leadership team. They're great educators and great people. So if you've not had a chance to meet them, please say hello. They are great and they're contributing a lot. We also have found great success with our teacher in residence program through BREC, and we do hope to continue that as well. I will fast forward to goal number 5. When we're looking at communication, we've offered some workshops for parents related to COVID-19. And we've also had some technology workshops that were led by Dr. McGettigan. Regarding our documents, if you may have noticed in Dr. Adley's weekly communication, trying to bring clarity to the strategic plan, we've been breaking down the components of it week after week with the paragraph. And so we will continue that until we make it through the entire document. Regarding facilities, as you're aware, we've appointed the building, or not we, but the building committee has been appointed, and there's a chairperson, and the overview of the ed specs have been presented there. Regarding technology, we have new laptops for elementary teachers per our replacement cycle. And the ViewSonic replacement is also about complete, with just a few ViewSonics in the budget for next year at the elementary level to complete that. So those were the select bullets. Glad to go into more detail with anything you would like.
Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. I'll open it up to board questions. Mr. Sini.
Chris, on the DEI front, as you form these parent communities, how are you ensuring we're getting a broad representation of parents on these committees at each school?
The first key was at each school, so trying to make sure each school is represented. And also we want gender representation if we can. We would like some racial differences if we can as well. And as you know, there is an active group of parents that have been supporting the work since we've started. And so that group has been helpful in trying to identify the people who are participating.
I'm sorry, the active group of parents being
so
PTOs
So the CDSP has a special topics group, and under that group, there is there are parents at each school, like a DEI group.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because we heard some comments this evening that people are feeling left out of this process, that the administration ensures that whoever's selecting these groups are being inclusive.
Yeah, and one of the keys to this is we also want to make sure that the committee has people that are trying to support the DEI work moving forward. So that is an important piece to the progress.
And then maybe if you guys could just touch upon the point you made that you've had the positive progress on the strategic plan because of the current state of affairs with the virus as well as limited resources. I mean, this board even this evening came under a bit of a fire for pausing either the strategic plan or certain initiatives of the plan, but it's pretty clear that you guys are stretched to the gill, if that's a good way to put it. And how much delay is this current state of affairs causing you in terms of some of this implementation work and the professional development work?
I would say it's not preventing any of the year one goals getting done to some extent. Some of it we are doing differently because we can do it differently and have to do it differently. I'm stalling on a bit of these things in part because if I ask Marge for like 15 subs in order to do a professional development, it's not going to go well for me.
Nope.
Or for the teachers or for the students to be pulling teachers to do that work, even though it is important. So that's delayed, but I'm still hopeful that we can get the work done this year that we set out to do.
Thanks for the color. Thank you.
Mrs. Ackman.
So just to be even more direct at what I think Mr. Sini is saying, and if I'm not, please feel free to correct me. Part of the reason the board hasn't acted on a transfer is the board hasn't been presented with a transfer to act on. So we did take some heat tonight, like, please approve. We have nothing in front of us to approve. The question, it sounds like Dr. Adley, you think at our next meeting, you will put something before us.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Ackman.
And the DEI committee not meeting, ideally it was this week, is not because of that. It's because we wouldn't have been able to meet in person. And that was just an administrative choice to think it's better to meet in person to launch that work.
So what I'm hearing is like the work hasn't stopped, although it's challenging to keep the work going. You're doing what you can, meeting how you can. But again, it's about teachers in classrooms and keeping the schools open. So
yes, it's on brand
juggling
with
that.
the rest of COVID, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trimber. Just a little follow-up to Mr. Sini's point, because I think we've heard repeatedly when we put these district-wide teams together or we put together these committees, if there's any way you could on the website or present to us who's on these committees and just a little understanding of the process behind them. If our partners in CDSP is helping, that's great. But I think, over time we've heard, well, who's on the committee, and the committee wasn't representative of the community or the school. And I haven't seen it that way in the committees I've seen, but I think a little more view into who's on the committee by school, who's in the broader DEI committee, and just an update on the process of how that all came together.
Yes, I'm absolutely glad to do that. And I'll include that in one of the updates related to DEI was the request for the board DEI updates, not to be too meta about it. So I'll include it in that as well.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tramberg. Mrs. Hockman.
Sorry, but to my knowledge, and I still read the school wires, interest has been gauged in all the school wires if you'd like to join this committee. Is that the case? Like, am I remembering correctly?
It's not an all call of please come one, come all, because it's incredibly limited.
Okay.
For sure, but we're definitely trying to make sure there's representation from each of the schools, from people that have been invested in the work since we started doing the work 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
That was gonna be my point. That it's been in the wires that if you are interested in this, to go and contact your school PTOs.
Yes, in the wires of the PTOs, absolutely. I think it's been there, but not from a principal.
Yeah, there
or
may be
anything.
more ways to do it. I know I had seen it, and that's
Yeah,
where.
absolutely.
I actually also like a board member. So if anybody would like to participate on that group, would be appreciated. I will say this too, though. I mean, Mr. Sini, just to put on the table, I want people on the committee who want to support it. Right?
Say that again.
We need people on the committee. I don't mean the board, sorry. I need people on the committee who are going to support the initiative. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we're not going to hear other people who are against it and so on and so forth. But I can't be apologetic about it. I want to put on the committee a diverse group of people who are supportive of this of this initiative. It's not mutually exclusive to alienating other people. That's not the case, but this is a board goal that we want to advance, and I want people who are going to sit at the table to advance it.
Mr. Sini.
Yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't saying that people who want to derail this.
Okay, all right. Okay.
But this notion of an all call seems pretty important. Again, this board week in, week out has been, brought into some discussions, I think amongst parents, actually, if you kind of listen through these public comments with our ear to it, of course. But some people are feeling left out, not informed. So it's, if it's not being accomplished by some of our partners, I think it's incumbent that we make our parents, our constituents, feel part of the process, or at least informed of the process.
Yes, of course.
And we can do a better job on the communication side. So I
If I
appreciate that.
can add, Mr. Sini, to, in the spirit of all call, one of the components of the team, and this was in the September presentation, the first DEI one this year, is every person who's on the committee itself. Also, because of this exact reason, we want to make sure everyone feels included that wants to be part of the work. They need to have a network of 5 people that they worked with regarding what's happening in the committee. So if anyone wants to be in someone's network and they're not on the committee, they should contact me and I'll make sure everyone finds a place on the network.
Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. Mrs. Best. You still have your hand up?
I'm good, thank you. I was going to say, all I was going to add is that it's my understanding that while the committee that Mr. Tranberg's putting together doesn't have room for anyone who's interested, I do believe that the PTOs all have their DEI committees who would love the participation of everyone who's interested in their particular school community. Thank you.
I think what might help, Chris, is I've heard a couple of things: school, PTO, CDSP, top of the house committee with the board on it, kind of like a one pager that shows.
I love when you ask me for
who's
a
involved
visual.
and how. So I think would help. Mr. Brown.
I just am a little concerned. I mean, I think sounds like we want diversity in everything but opinion, which I don't think is what we're trying to look for here. I hope not. I think the diversity and opinion we have at this board actually sharpens our work. So I'm just trying to understand the merits of having everybody who's marching in unison and of the same opinion, and why that actually benefits this process.
I can answer that if you want.
Sure.
No, certainly the diversity of opinion, diversity of, yes, but ultimately the board approved, collectively we approved to move forward with this. There's a difference between that and just not trying to advance it, because the purpose of this is to advance the discussion and advance the instruction, teaching, and learning around it. So provided we're all on that same page, that's fine. Yep. We'll make sure we get diversity of opinions. That's critical.
Mrs. Ackman.
Speaking of knowing committees, I don't think I know the building committee or who the board rep is. Did I miss it, or can we get it? I just don't know.
For what?
For the building committee.
I'm the rep.
Oh, it's
It
Jill
was in
Congrats.
the, yeah.
Building
Could we just get a
on the-
list of that
But I-
committee?
But it was on the committee sheet that I put out.
All right, I missed it, sorry.
Yeah, no
But if we
problem.
could get the full committee at some point, just so we know.
It hasn't
who's
been,
rep.
it hasn't been finalized yet.
Oh,
It's
that's
literally-
that's what I was.
I have the same confusion as you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Sarah
Who's
Newman
created?
from the Selectman's Office. It's Dave Martin from Board of Finance, and it's Jill McCammon from Board of Ed, and that's really it right now. So the first
I thought it
Selectman,
had said it had been.
no, the first Selectman's Office is working diligently. We have an OPC meeting tomorrow morning to recruit folks. As everyone is listening, anyone interested in joining, we're looking for architects and construction folks. So we're looking to add a few more folks to the committee. So thanks for bringing that up. All right, good. Any other questions? Mrs. McCammon?
I would like an update on the work of Marilyn Friend at some point when appropriate, whether it's at the curriculum committee or here or embedded in something else, just a little bit more in depth, please.
Thank you, Mrs. McCammon.
If I may just respond, Mr. Denning.
Sure, Mrs. Klein.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. She's actually, Marilyn's going to be back in district. We're actually zooming on the 24th and 25th. And then we are planning to do a presentation, but we will certainly give an update at the board meeting prior to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein. Mrs. Ackman?
So I know we're in the update stage of this, but at some point, and it would be sooner to the year, I'd like to see how we're measuring achievement. Like, okay, this is what we've done, but if we can start to measure maybe in the third quarter, and certainly we'll have to do it at board goals and objectives, but where we think we are, how far we'll get if we have limitations, just some measurables around where we are. And that would include, I would love at some point to hear from our elementary APs. And I assume that would be, again, be closer to the end of the year because they're still, doing great work now. But I'd love to get an update, given it was such an important initiative from last year.
Thank you, Ms. All right, good. All right, we'll move on to follow-up discussion from the January board meeting. Questions on the 2022-2023 proposed Board of Education budget. These are questions. We're starting out with questions the administration has worked on that came through the Board of Ed as we reviewed RC. So I will turn it over to you, Dr. Adley, and I'm sure Mr. Rudel might have some knowledge.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, pardon me. So these are the questions from the Board of Education, the questions that we received from the two RTM committees and the Board of Finance. We're more or less complete with those two. So at the end of the week, before the weekend, we'll send those out to the Board of Ed and the respective chairs. If there's any other meetings, if there's any other questions that stem from tonight, we can either answer them tonight or we'll take those and we'll add those to them. If any of the Board of RTM or Board of Finance have any questions that stem from night two, we can take those and we'll add them to the list and share those with the board as well. So at this point, I think simply the answers to the questions are here. We just go through one question at a time. If there are questions from the board, they can certainly ask them. If we rephrase the question, it wasn't to try and change something. It's like we're just trying to capture with everybody. So we did the best to capture, I think, the spirit of the questions involved. And after this, if the board has other questions, I will certainly take them. So I'm not going to read them to the board. I think we'll just go through them. Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just go through them number one, and
that's fine. And
we'll go from there, and anybody from the cabinet can jump in. So we'll open the floor with number one.
All right, I think we'll give everyone a second to read through them real quick, and then anyone that has anything on RC.
Okay. Oh, yeah, maybe do by RC. That's probably good. Yes.
RC
Thank
11,
you. Thank you.
Athletics, anything with respect to the answers there. We can always come back to these two. So I will move on to RC 12 on facilities. Okay, so you kind of clarified your recommendation of the 4% increase and what other districts are doing. So you're still holding to the recommended 4% increase.
Yeah, we've played out on the next page over sort of.
Yep.
So can I just ask a question
Sure,
on that
Mrs.
recommendation? You're saying you recommended as rentals of the buildings have lagged since COVID. Hopefully we're coming out of this crest in January. Are you saying you expect them to continue to lag, or I just don't understand that reasoning?
We've had a couple of groups indicate that they've essentially dropped out. So we're assuming within the budget that those groups will not participate next year.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. McCann.
Did they indicate why they are dropping out? Is it for financial reasons or is it just lack of interest?
Lack of interest / enrollment.
Slash what?
Enrollment.
Oh, sorry.
Enrollment.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, sorry,
Yes.
I should have, with the preamble, just said that we took out the one-to-one and we took out the open choice because we're having a dedicated meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question about the groundskeeper?
Are we there yet?
That's Thursday 11.
That's not athletics, though, the groundskeeper.
I thought
That's-
we moved to, but we moved to,
It's maintenance.
sorry, we're talking about usage fees, so that we're moving on. So
I don't know if that's in, where's the
Okay.
groundskeeper?
RC 12 is called maintenance. Here it's labeled facilities. That's what's causing the confusion.
yes,
Go ahead.
but the groundskeeper is in 12. Can I can wait if you want. Okay. I will ask that question. I would love to know from, maybe this is Rich or Mr. Lynch. He's asking, you guys are asking for the full-time groundskeeper. Is there a way to do it with overtime that would be less money, or is that not feasible?
Typically, our grounds crew doesn't take a lot of overtime, and I think we would have a lot of difficulty having our existing grounds crew work, let's say, a 10-hour day
Okay.
every day for the whole year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Ackman.
So I'm going to ask this on the few of the proposed FTEs, but the groundskeeper would be someone if we could get a schedule and a jobs description.
And just to clarify, Rich, this groundskeeper is for all grounds, specific to the high school?
All grounds, all buildings.
All grounds, all buildings. Are there specific teams assigned to specific buildings, or is the ground?
They kind of go where needed.
Okay.
So Mike, if it's mowing, he'll send them to the schools to mow. Some might do gardening.
Got it.
Transportation of like items like desks and furniture.
Okay.
Ms. Ackman, did you say schedule?
Yeah.
There was a job description.
Anyone on Zoom? Okay. RC13 music. Mrs. McCammon.
I did ask this informally, but I'll ask formally. What are orchestra, chorus, and band uniforms? What does that mean for our students?
Chris, you just want to answer that now? Get it out of the way. Oh, you don't? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I thought you-
Thank you.
RC21 library media. Okay, so Chris, you're going to cover this in one of the curriculum presentations. Okay. RC15 technology. Questions on repairs and number of devices. Any additional board questions there?
Duke, I'm sorry, how do you want to do this as a process? Do we want to answer these questions, or if we have new questions, should we just do new questions at the end?
Yeah, we'll do
Okay,
new questions.
thank you.
So anything with RC15 and technology? All right. Anything specific to number 8? So I guess, are we looking for job description and roles and responsibilities on this additional technician? Do we need anything more than what we have answered there? Mrs. Ackman?
Yeah, and one of my question relates to if we now have only level 1 things handled, if the presumption is we will now have only level 1 repairs handled at the high school, how does that then free up that tech's time? And can they help the middle school? So again, I'm kind of looking for a schedule and a job description and a current workload demand.
Mrs. McCammon?
But back in early COVID, we talked about how much our technology people were working. Can we define that for everybody, what they're
Sorry, I was just.
giving some hand signals?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't understand them, but
Go ahead again.
can we just, I'd love to know what our technician, sort of what their kind of like caseload or hour data across the board, not just for the new technician, but what does the load look like currently that they're
Okay.
operating, please?
Thank you, Joe. RC26 ELP that outlines other area tuitions for preschool. Any additional questions on that? Mrs. Ackman?
So what's this comparable tuition to, like a 3s program, a 4s program? We have comparisons here. I'm just looking. I know it's not the preschool program.
I believe it's the 4s, but I can confirm with Laura.
Mitch, could we just add for reference in 9, just add what our tuition actually is? Thank you. RC24 special education. Anything else? Mrs. Ackman?
Sorry.
That's all
My question would be, given, again, so hope we're planning for a downward trend in COVID. Are we saying that these districts and or whomever we were sharing with before has already said they will not do ride sharing next year? Or that's what we're experiencing this year?
So I think it'll largely depend on whether or not the driver shortage nationwide continues. Right now, we're expecting it to continue. We're still short drivers and many other districts are still short drivers.
Mrs. McCammon.
Rich, what is the reason for the driver shortage? Is it a shortage of people able to drive, or is it health related in that people are unwilling to drive in these?
It's people who just don't want to drive anymore. It's not necessarily health related, but they don't financially either want to do it, or maybe they don't feel safe doing it anymore, or they've gotten jobs elsewhere as pay rates have gone up.
Thank you.
And is it any possible to get through the process quickly to certify people?
Mrs. Hockman.
So the next one is mine, and I think there's just a misunderstanding of my question. My question is, I can't get the book to box out. So in personnel, it says we have 773.25 personnel. But when I go through the RCs, and then when I look in object detail personnel, I get a different number. And it could just be that I'm missing something, or it could be that I'm missing some stipend, but I just can't get it to box out.
We can
So,
do a schedule,
okay.
like a summary.
It might just be me messing it up, but I couldn't get the accounting right. That's what I was checking out, the whole book and number of FTEs.
Is that that's related to 11?
No, it's related to the entire book. So your front of your book and your
Yeah.
back of your book needs to
No,
box.
I mean, we
Line
captured
11.
that question for you. That's all right. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So that's kind of where you were coming from in this, the number of drivers in the personal doesn't match the drivers in the RC.
No, that's not what I said. I said I didn't know if it was the drivers, and I think the question was interpreted as I was looking at drivers. What-
Right.
But
So
what
you
I'm
just
saying is,
clarified the bigger
in the
question.
whole book, I can't get our number of personnel to box out.
Okay, good. Okay, number 12, need for additional psychologist. Anything else there that we need? Number 13. Give everyone a minute to look through that. Yes, Mr. Brown.
Number 12, this was on Saturday, there's a question about being look at the schedule. I'm sure we have a presentation of the changes were. Going back to the earlier presentation, we talked about the psychologists and the uses for it.
Hey, Dave, your mic, please.
Thanks, Julie.
Must be the seat.
It was just, that I didn't know if Shirley was going to provide us any more details and sort of like the day of the psychologist and what their usage is as we move forward. And if her timing doesn't align, that's fine, but it was from a different discussion, not Saturday.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Kind of something almost what they outlined with the SLPs below. Okay, good. All right, number 14 answers that question. Anything else there? Good. Move on to Rc19 Curriculum. Right. Anything there?
Sorry,
We're gonna get a schedule around that, I guess, is what. Go ahead, Mrs. McCown.
Yeah, sorry, that's my question. Are you and Shirley going to provide a little more detail on the PD, please?
I think that was the goal, just to kind of, I know it's kind of spread throughout, but just to kind of get kind of a schedule of it. 16.
That's fine. I'm
Yep.
fine for now.
You're
I
fine
mean,
for
I'll
now.
come back to it, but
All right, good. Thank you, Mrs. Hockman. At number 17, can we spread out the purchase of the Western Suit books? Anything else on that? That kind of gives an overview. So I guess, Rich or Chris, if we go annually, then we're just subject to whatever increases are the following year, the following year, the following year. So it could be, way more than the 30 originally. 6 years just seems like a long time in this current environment for a book, when things go digital and things get updated.
It's all digital. It updates every year. So
It's all digital.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
only digital, actually.
Okay.
This is only for the digital.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Got it. All right. Art, go ahead, Mrs. Buchanan.
Then to that point, why is there a 6-year end date? Is there often do they look at the format differently, or given if you can do it responsibly?
If I'm a publisher, it's because I'm going to publish a new edition and make you start all over again with the $75,000
Pricing.
purchase. Yeah.
Thank you.
The publisher's methodology. RC16 administration. So I guess, Rich, have you built in whatever costs are associated with kind of the approach that we're, I think, locked into going forward?
So Zoom is in the budget, and then there is some small additional money in other board expenses to maintain filming, like curriculum committee, which is a new committee, and then any other board members as well.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Sorry, I'm waiting to get on this one, Duke. Chris, what's the title that we're purchasing here for Westminster?
I can get that for you. It's just the renewal of our current book. It's so
Thanks,
I can get
Chris.
it.
Awesome.
Anything else, Mrs. Ackman, on those costs associated with board meetings?
Nope.
Okay, good. Breakout of our dues for the administration. Anything else there?
Alan, would you mind just quickly reviewing what each of them does for us?
Sure. CABE is the board organization, boards of education. So it services in a number of ways, assistance and policies and legislative. We also had the, our retreats when we do them. So that type of thing. That's our professional organization as a board. The Center for School Change. It has recently changed its name. I deliberately kept it as this just so as you get, you know what it was. That's one of my professional organizations. It's one I've been was added to my contract some years ago, or maybe last year was the first time it was added. But it's just Dr. Lemons is the executive director of that, and I find that a tremendously helpful organization. You'll find that many of our surrounding towns here are also part of that organization. The Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, it's again a superintendent's organization. CES is a cooperative educational services that's up in Trumbull, and that's one of the 6 rests in the state that service our particular area. It's also the area that will be facilitating the open choice program. The CES superintendent, I guess that's the superintendent part of the RESC organization. The Tri-State, you're very familiar with that here, and so we're part of that organization. Darien has been a leader in that organization for many years. I also sit on that board. The Southern Fairfield Superintendents, which has been an absolutely invaluable organization. That's the best. That's the best value for dollar you're getting right there. They meet every week, and in some cases more than that. That's my fellow superintendents. And the District Management Council, it's actually, they changed their name to the District Management Group. That is another professional organization. It's strictly for superintendents across the nation.
What does it support you with? Management practice?
It supports me on anything from budget development to professional learning, to teaching and learning, both practical logistics and also teaching and learning.
Thank you.
All right, so that covers this document. I'll open it up to any additional questions from the board. Since I know you spent Sunday reviewing the book and thinking about the questions that you asked. So. Anything else we want to add for the administration? Mrs.
I have a
Parent.
bunch of questions, but how do you want to go through it? Do you want to go RC by RC? I don't know if anybody else has other.
Yeah, I would go RC by RC so they can capture it.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the BYOD. I know we're gonna have a larger discussion on it, but just as we're discussing that, I'm curious to know what liability we have if it's somebody else's, if it's a family's device. Can we go in to look for files, or I just want to know what the security, I know what it is when they're in our school building, but when it's not. I can keep going, but I.
Yes, go ahead.
Should we go RC by
Yeah, I guess
RC, or how?
Well, that's fine. Well, then I will do that. Thank you. So we'll go RC1, Darien High School.
All right, I thought we should go RC because I had one. Again, can I get a job description and a schedule for the bursar? And then what are the new Gatsby rules? I don't need them right now, but if you could disseminate them to the board. And my question between what they are, I mean, you could give them to me. I don't know that I'm going to know them inside and out, but what is more onerous about them now, demanding more time is really what I'm looking for.
Mrs. Best.
Thank you. I was interested in finding out what we do with $12,000 worth of printed handbooks.
Anything else on RC1? Mrs. Ackman?
So you're gonna see a theme to my question, same thing. PE teacher, how many classes are hitting that 26, 28 level that's concerning to the principal? That's it.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to RC2, Fitch Academy. Anything there on Fitch? We'll move to RC3, Middlesex Middle School. Mrs. Ackman.
Campus monitor, that second campus monitor, kind of job description and schedule. I already asked for tech assistant, right? Yeah. Okay.
RC5, Henley. So let's do, if there's anything specific to the school, you could say it, but we'll now look at any additional questions on the elementary schools. Mrs. Ackman.
So PE teacher, same request.
Can I just ask, when you say schedule, are you just looking for the work hours?
I guess what I'm looking at is we've always been able to manage it. And I know Luke said we can't now because you can't have lunch at 9 a.m. and I trust him. So, but I guess what I'm looking is what's precluding it from us. And is there any way that we've looked at, can we run gym in the morning at Henley and in the afternoon at Royal exclusively? That's kind of what we did in the past. And then I know it got kind of more homegrown. And I'm wondering if we can go back to that model to try to save an FTE. We might not be able to. I'm just looking to do my due diligence.
Anything else with respect to the elementary school RCs? You good?
Well, no, so open choice, I think Mrs. McCammon did a really good job on the one-to-one. It's saying like, what are we looking for? I guess I'm saying if we're gonna call, I think we have to correct a few things. One, we've had at least 3 meetings where open choice came to the board. That doesn't mean the board may feel it still needs more information, but we have had 3 meetings on it. I rewatched all of them. The board didn't have questions. So if we're calling a special meeting, I guess what I'm looking for is what does the board want to know so that we can tell the administration in advance so that we get there and we do real work. Because I've watched 3 meetings where there were incredibly limited questions asked, and now we're calling a meeting inside of a really busy budget schedule as well. So what do we want out of this special meeting?
So go ahead, Mr. Sini.
A vote on the program. It is a program that we're implementing. It's basically a policy decision of whether or not to participate in the program. We have not voted on the program.
Okay, so
and
that's
therefore, excuse me, and therefore, I do think there are critical questions, such as what is the drop dead deadline in terms of how we select students? What is the minimum number of students that we can participate? Is it just 1? I think we listed a
Yes,
number of different
we do
questions.
have all the questions from there, yes?
Okay, so I don't want to go through all the questions again, but it's critical that this board makes a vote to participate in the program, in my humble opinion.
Okay, so.
Let me go right.
Yeah.
Mrs.
Well, I
McCann.
can summarize what the 4 high-level items were that we talked about. It was looking at cost, also the incremental cost, how you might define that, but looking at cost in different ways. Looking at enrollment as best as possible, and understanding flexibility and, how we would model it through the years with the understanding there could be some flexibility in terms of how it's deployed any given year. Also the potential impact of COVID and the in-migration we've had and how we're thinking about that. John just mentioned dates. And then the last request from Ms. Best was to dimensionalize what the benefits are for our individual students. And I know we have talked about the program, but really to make that come to life.
So we wouldn't, oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So we would include all of those, and the executive director, Mr. Demay, would be coming down also to answer any other questions. So those are all in the works at the moment. And if the board has any other things that come out of tonight or over the next couple of days they want me to include, that's fine.
And I think just adding to that too would be just a little more detail on the services and the reimbursement and how that works between districts, and just a very clear schedule of, if you read through the stuff on the website, there's different districts and there's different enrollment numbers. The stipend goes from 3,000 to 4,000. So just clarity around the stipend, just an outline, which I think CES will do. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I think there was enough voices heard from the community and from our other partners that I think we just need a refresh and an update on it. So I think we captured most of the questions, and I don't know if there's any other questions people want to add. I would say within the next day or so, get them on the table. But I think the importance, and from what we heard from a community standpoint and from our partner standpoint, just let's make sure we've got a full view of the program. I think, you know, kind of, I'd like to hear from the administration. So you're recommending 16, but as the year goes out, and I know Rich is working on what things look like with some of these developments coming online. Kindergarten enrollment has been notoriously difficult to predict right up through July and August. So I want to make sure we give some leeway there. And then I think we have to be very clear in answering the questions about going over classroom size, which we're not going to do with this program. This is about empty seats in classrooms. So that has to be taken into account with the developments that are coming on board, what our enrollment looks like. So those are some of the things that are on my mind. Mrs. Parent.
I just think it'd be really helpful to have some real world, districts that have done this in the past. If there's some real world financials that you can pull out what actually does it look like. And if there's a testimony, I just would love to hear like testimonials of people that have actually done this and had this in their district. How does it work? And how do they feel about it?
So Rich,
you're sitting beside one, but that's okay.
So
But yes,
Rich,
I get it.
your thoughts, Rich, at a high level. Paul Hendrickson made a comment from the Board of Finance. He's participated in this in the districts where he's been a business manager, but you've got certain committees looking for a 5 or a 10-year forecast. I mean, what's the reality and how do you see forecasting something like this out? We agree to 16 kids this year. Those kids basically come on board in kindergarten and go through 12th grade. Who's to say all 16 stay over the course of those 13 years? Next year, we take 2 drop out. The following year, we take none, 3 drop out. Like, how do you forecast something like that?
So I think we would assume that the 16 are going to stay. It is true that they could move from Norwalk to New York. And they'd be gone out of the system. But I think what we would probably show is them starting in kindergarten and then them going to the senior year in high school. Obviously, the further out you go, the less accurate your data is because you have less data points. So the enrollment projections that we did went 5 years out. So that would essentially get them through elementary school. And then we would kind of do a rollover forecast of what it would look like as they progress through. And so then we can show what the class level would look like. How many seats are you away from breaking a section, let's say in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, down the road? What would be your max enrollment at the middle school? How does that compare maybe to where your peak enrollment was, I think, which was in like 09 or 10 for the middle school? And I think that's how we would build it. You'd have your incremental costs. So in the budget, we put the elementary allocation of resources, which was that $2,240. That's your consumables, it's your textbooks, it's your periodicals, things like that. There would be a cost for a device for the student as they progress through. And then when they go to high school, if they participate in sports, that per student schedule you see in the budget book. So if somebody plays basketball or football or hockey or soccer, whatever it might be, those costs would be associated with that student in high school.
But in people looking for a financial forecast, how do you do that?
So like Paul said,
I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, so you take 16 kids and you string them out through 13 years of school. So as Paul said on Saturday, he's lived in it. I've lived in it in a previous district. As long as you're not tipping a section, your costs are really the materials that you're providing to the student and any technology that you're providing to the student. Any real cost for that student is if you tip section.
Because then you're going to have to build in the salary cost of the teacher and the benefits of the teacher. Other than that, that whole per pupil doesn't really go away that we have. If you break down that per pupil, $23,000, portion of it is special education out of district placement. So if an open choice student comes here and they need special education services, Shirley and her team would work with the Norwalk Special Education Department and kind of come to an agreement about whether or not they need speech or OT or whatever it might be. And then you actually build back the home district for those services. So you're not taking in those utility costs, whether it's heat or electricity. Those are sunk costs. They're not going to change if you have one open choice student or 16 open choice students. The copier lease is an example. Transportation is actually not a part of our per pupil. And we also don't provide transportation for open choice students. So once you kind of boil down that per pupil expenditure, you're really getting just to those materials, supply, and technology.
But after that year one of 16 kids, you're totally crystal balling it in terms of what it could potentially be thereafter.
Yeah,
in terms of number of kids and those costs.
So we would basically just take the allocation of resources, and that would be your cost in the future years. We would not assume that you would take, once those 16 hit kindergarten and then move to first, that forecast won't show anybody in kindergarten in that following year. Whether you choose to take 10 in the following year, 0 in the following year, 5 in the following year, you'd probably be able to look at that schedule and see how many students are you away from breaking. And it might be that in a year from now in kindergarten, everything's really tight. Next year or 2 years from now, you're not going to take any students. And then the year following, maybe kindergarten isn't so tight, and maybe that's the year you take them. So by showing that variance between hitting a class section versus what your projected enrollment is, that's really what you're going to use for your forecast.
Okay, that makes sense. And then that initial projection gives you what that cost is that would actually be incremental. And then you can take that into the next year we do 0, or the next year we do 4 or 6.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Brown. I called on you, Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Duke. The question I had was following up on Ms. Parent's question. We seem to have a lot of notion of what the cost is going to be up front. And you were asking about what are some of the benefits for people who've done this before. Has anyone done any keeping in the same unit of dollars? Has anyone done what the benefits are down the road? And I would just throw out the example of, we see like a study, if you go to college, you'll make 200 grand more over your life than if you're just a high school diploma. Has anyone done anything about what the impact is of having these programs for both the students locally who bring people in and the students who participate?
I can't really, oh, sorry. I can't really speak for here at the moment, whether they've been done. I do know in the greater Hartford area, the correct organization has provided some of that. I will mention also, if I may, just take a moment, the idea of advocating for more funds is not mutually exclusive from supporting the program, because I've been a big supporter of the program, but I've also been a big advocate. In the same way as I'm an advocate of the teacher in residence program, they should continue to fully fund that, or fund it in a greater way to make it more available to people and helpful to the districts. So, and some of the fees that are quoted, whether it's incidental or other, maybe you might want to think that, Alan, you talk about different fees. Well, different districts do it differently. You could commit to, let's take 20 kids out every year, and if it breaks a section, it breaks a section. And therefore there are different costs in it. So you can do it in different ways. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more for the future presentation. We're going to learn more. If anybody had that type of information provided, I'd be curious to see it, just to make the comparison apples to apples.
Seems to me that information would have to come from the organization itself.
Yeah.
It's nothing we're going to have the.
No, I wouldn't expect us.
Nothing we're going to dream up. Let me go to Mrs. Worm. You got your hand up, Tara Worm?
I do. You guys were compiling questions, and I thought one of them was how the lottery really works. Is it a straight up lottery, or is there some parameters around it that you must qualify in order to be involved in the lottery? Obviously, as we've heard and we know, Rowayton looks pretty much exactly like Darien. Are they involved in that lottery as well, or are they excluded from that? Just wondering how we're going to, get the diversity we're looking for if we end up with, 5 kids from Rowayton.
Thank you, Mrs. Ward. Mrs. Ackman.
Just in terms of information for the meeting, one, I'd love to know how many kids we send out to schools like Rogers, Tech in Stanford, Brian McMahon, and if I'm not thinking of any, feel free to include them, but how many Darien students we do send out by lottery, by choice, all those are a lottery and choice program. So I don't mean like special ed
No, I
outplacements.
understand.
I'm looking for similar type placements that Darien kids go out. And then two, and it's understandable, but we heard a lot of confusion about the history. And I get that there are some people watching now that weren't watching 2 years ago. But I do think it'd be important to do even a quick 5-minute recap in case, and tell people the meetings and the dates in case they want to go back and watch. Because we did know Dr. Adley was asking the legislature to do this. And I just want everyone to be informed. They can have whatever opinion they'd like. And I appreciate hearing from you. But I think with more information and the same information, we all operate on the same set of facts. And I think because things have been strung out for a long time because of, process and pandemic, it would be good to take 5 minutes and recap where we are and let people know where those meetings are if they want to go back and watch.
The only thing I would add to your comment is just, again, to give full picture of everything that we are already doing in a district is include the ABC house in that. Because I think that's important and that those students are here in the district. So just to give a big picture of what we're doing.
My only thing is it's a private program. So it's contextual, but it's
Right.
not really a Darien Public School program.
Anything else on the elementary schools? Mr. Senior?
I'm sorry, so the process, I think this is important when we go to this special meeting. Again, this is more of a policy discussion, understanding what the program's all about. But we still will have a budget decision based on the number of children. And that budget decision is actually going to happen year in and year out going forward. It's not like we choose a dozen kids or 14 kids or 2 kids this year, and then we'll be holding to that number going forward. It's going to be a budget decision, as I see it, every year. So we're not going to go into this depth, and I'm not saying anybody's implying that, but I think it's important that the public knows what the process is going to be going forward if we do decide to move forward in this program as a board.
Thank you, Mr. Senior. Anything else with respect to the elementary schools or open choice, and anything that comes to mind, just please email me. We'll move on to RC11, athletic, health, and PE. Any additional questions there? We'll move on to RC12, maintenance. Any additional questions there? RC13, music. RC14, art. RC15, technology. Yes, Mrs. Parent.
I have a question about the middle school Mac lab. We heard on Saturday that so much is, or if not everything is web-based. Why do we need that specific Mac lab if everything is web-based? Can it not be accessed on their own devices? I just need to understand what they do there.
Mrs. Ackman.
Yeah, similarly, the 85 desktops, what's their usage? Are we providing laptops to middle school teachers too? What and how and why do we need those? And just while we're on tech, I would say the grade 12 iPads we're recycling, we're taking that as a deficit. Should we go one-to-one, which I don't know if we're talking about in a special meeting or tonight, I can't remember. Are they usable still? Can we use them, or no, the generation's too old and so we just need to take them and take the 17 back?
Dude.
Yes, Mr. Sini.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think the trouble the board is having again is, there's a policy decision here on the education parameters, and maybe it's not as clear cut as board, but maybe an educational policy decision. I don't even know. I think somebody raised that, and then, we have a budget decision here as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
RC16 administration. Anything there? Mr. Brown?
Just to understand this, Alan, we cut that 17,000.
Cut what, Dave?
Okay.
Administration or 17,000.
Well,
Let's see. On the 17,000 paid in detail for the dues, you mentioned this is board, not superintendent. If we cut that, I'm just asking the question, what would that change in your day?
Did I hear you saying Cape?
Cut,
Yes.
Cabe?
That's what I asked.
Yeah.
You
I
want to
would
cut
say
Cape?
no.
Mr.
No,
I think it's a long serve.
it's a resource.
You'd lose your resource across the state for everything from legislation to what districts are doing to professional connections with the board, the professional learning opportunities. We don't do the CABE policy service. We don't pay for that particular thing, but we still get updates from them. So it's a very useful. I would hope the board would stay in that organization, to be honest with you, David.
No, this was actually asked more of an opportunity for you to sell it, just so we didn't cut it.
Oh, is it?
So the public didn't ask.
Sorry, I didn't pick that up.
Thank you. Thank you.
RC17 health. Yeah, Mrs. Ackman.
So Rich, can you clarify this whole nursing change for me? Are these nurses we have no matter what, based on our population of school and on, like we have school of 500, it requires 2 nurses and we've been accounting 1 for special ed and 1 general ed? Or the 4 nurses we've moved, are those nurses specific to our special ed program?
So I believe, and Shirley can jump in if she'd like, that they service all students.
Okay, so the change is because they service all students. Okay, so the only thing that I would put for the board to consider, because then I think they're in the right spot, is the LPN that's a one-on-one might belong in special ed because it's there for a specific IEP driven reason. And from an accounting practice, if that's what we're doing, we're not making value judgments, we're just tracking expenses. That change might belong back in special ed. And I would put that for the board to ponder and consider. And again, it's not a value judgment, it's about tracking expenses. But I do understand the other move if they're servicing all children and for some reason we had split them in the past.
RC18 personnel.
Can I just ask a quick question based on that, what Tara mentioned? So only because, this is still new to me. So at the last meeting, there was a question asked about it as well. And I believe Shirley mentioned that it was tracked elsewhere in order for the cost sharing and all of that. So is it necessary to break it out in this budget if it's already being broken out where we need to for financial reasons? I'm just a question. I don't know.
Well, I can answer it from Tara. What I'm looking to do as a board member, given that it becomes our budget. So the reason why I'm suggesting it is that if what we're asked to do is track our expenses over year and look at drivers in the budget. And again, without value judgment, I don't mind paying for, I'm in supportive. I shouldn't say I don't mind. I'm completely supportive of what's in our IPs. It's starting to be generalized throughout different RCs in the budget, and it gets hard for board members to track because you have to start to know certain expenses are no longer in the RC that they're assigned to. So that's why I'm suggesting it as a board member. I mean, we could put special ed through all the RCs and we could agree as a board that that's what we're going to do. And I'd be okay with that. I just feel like we're kind of picking and choosing. And there was a great point brought up on Saturday about the psychologists. We may be doing that as well. I would just like a consistent method. So that as board members, we can track and understand our expenses. That's all.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate it. I just want to understand why one versus the other and how it's working.
Tara, whatever the board wants to do in terms of its pleasure of where they record it, so that's fine. Behind the scenes, it doesn't impact how we track it and actually put it toward excess costs or otherwise. But whatever the board would like to do is fine.
Is there a methodology or direction you're trying to head in here, Rich?
So this request actually came from Alicia and Shirley. They wanted it coded in RC17. Either way, we're able to track it for special ed excess cost purposes or not.
Right.
I mean, I'll let Shirley speak a little bit if she wants to about the request.
Anyways, may I, Mr. Deneen?
Yes, please, Mrs. Klein. Thank you.
Just to weigh in on that, and Alicia and I did feel that as Ms. Aqua just said, all of the nurses really are shared among all students, whether they're students in general education or receiving special education services in those buildings. It is, I do agree, the exception is the new LPN that we brought in for a particular student. So that is the one exception for the LPN. So there was more fidelity by having them across all of the schools, since they are servicing all of our students. To Ms. Worm's point, yes, Ms. Worm, we do have excess costs. So if there is an allocation of one child, if the child with medical need, and they are receiving some services from that nurse that is servicing all of the kids in either Middlesex or high school or the elementary school, we disaggregate that proportion.
So I guess, Shirley, could you just go over your decision process to put the LPN for the one-on-one?
It was really with the nurses because, well, the LPN for the one-on-one was because that particular student requires, because of the level of
No, I understand. I understand that. I'm trying to get to, I guess, the accounting question. Why this RC versus the special ed RC?
I agree with what Mrs. Aquaman's saying. That one certainly could be attributed to a special ed RC because it's exclusive for that child.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Klein.
Absolutely.
The other thing was historically, we moved some lines around to accurately represent the lines of reporting. So that's why all the art teachers are now no longer underneath art and the music teachers aren't under music, they're under their respective buildings. So I don't know, again, I still think we end up with a little bit of a mix, but that is one of the things that we attempted to do. So I just wanted to remind the board that that is also something we've looked at when we look at where our line items go.
Well, we're all here. Anyone have an opinion as to wanting to move this particular line item over to the special ed budget? Yeah.
I'm in favor of that.
I think it makes sense. I mean, if it's IEP driven or.
Julie shaking her head.
I agree.
Everyone on board with that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Might not be.
I said agnostic.
Agnostic. All right. Everyone okay if we move it over to special ed?
I don't care.
Yeah. You're asking.
I'll make the decision. Well, let's move it over to special ed so we can move on.
Thank you.
Personnel.
I'm sorry, which RC we on?
We're on RC 18.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to Rc19 Curriculum. Mr. Senior.
Account 12001 Consultant Services. I kind of touched upon this question at the last meeting, but I'd like a better understanding of the DEI consultants charge for next year, especially if we're approving or a transfer of additional funds to address some issues this year. So maybe you could line them up for me to better understand, what might the 40,000 address, which you will do, but does any of that overlap with the 45,000 that you have proposed for next year's budget? Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Seen. Mrs. Parent.
I'll just raise my question I had before. I want to know a little bit more about the TC K2. It's a big nut. I'm just curious what that entails. And just what the new requirements are. Are they state new requirements? Are they that's my win-loss. I want to know more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parent. All right, we'll move on to RC20 Finance. We'll move on to RC21 Library Media. We'll move on to RC22 Technology Education. We'll move on to RC23 summer school. Just nice to hear that word summer with the cold out there. We'll move on to RC24 special education. Mr. Maroney.
And going back to my point I raised on Saturday, and I guess the question is to Mrs. McKemmon's point, who do the psychologists in special ed report to? Do they report to the building or do they report to special education? And if they do report to the building, then I think we should be consistent with all our other practices and move them into the building. If they don't, then they stay in special ed. So
We'll get more of an explanation of that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Maroney. RC25. Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I'm
No,
just
it's
gonna
okay.
flag again that I think the 75% reimbursement is a high reimbursement that we should just look at and be sure of.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. The board want any further conversation on that reimbursement number right now?
I mean,
Go ahead, Mr.
I went
Senior.
back and took the average before COVID and it was kind of in that range, if I remember correctly. Now it was trending in more recent years, it was trending a little lower.
Right.
But, I go back, I forgot, I think I counted the 11 years prior to COVID. And it was right in the ballpark. So I don't know if the trend is our friend or, do we take the median over 11 years?
I think I think you're liable to hear stuff throughout the year that it's going to be another different year.
I mean, if you exclude what we're saying for this year, the anomaly for last year, and that year where it was 100%, which we're probably never going to see again.
Yeah, I did that too, by the way. I took
The
that one
average
out.
is 75.5. But that doesn't necessarily mean we won't be at 70 or 75 or 80.
RC25 fixed expenses. RC26, the ELP, early learning program. RC28, there's really nothing in there, COVID expenses. And then I will move to anything on the capital budget. Capital budget. Are we good? Julie, Tara Worm, you're good? Okay, good. Well, thank you all.
Dude, I just have one broad comment.
Sure.
I'd encourage everybody to watch the F&B meeting from last night. First of all, some pretty interesting comments from its chair and not a lot of pushback. So the bigger question I have for administration, it was proposed or not proposed, but it mentioned that we're at least $1 million too high in this budget. So I'd love to maybe understand from the administration what $1 million reduction would do to this budget. You don't have to answer it now.
No, I'm not going to answer it now.
And if I might go a little further, some of the comments regarding shell games and accounting and how we operate here on the budget, I felt were a little reckless, but I'll leave it at that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Sini. Any other board comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, you may finish up with this as to where we go from here. Can I just clarify or just at least sort of the board?
Yep.
So I think it would be our intent to get to the board before the break here. In anticipation of the next meeting, as many of the questions as answered as possible. Both, well, just whatever you've added on this evening. So we will publish that. If there are one or two that need another day when we get back just to finish that off, then we'll do that with your understanding. There's a doodle going out tonight, but maybe you're around the table. CES can come to us on the 24th. I say that because any other time we want to be able to provide you with some of the data on the survey and that type of stuff, and that would allow us to do that. I don't know what the board's pleasure is now. You're going to back into another meeting on the 25th, but given what the purpose of that meeting is, I'm thinking you might want to have the discussion before that meeting. But I'm happy to.
What do you mean have that discussion?
Oh, have the discussion about one-to-one and open choice before you get to the 25th, I think it is, isn't it?
Right.
Yes, because that's
So we're talking one special meeting for both open choice and.
Correct.
Correct.
All right,
Correct.
that's better than two.
So email myself and Dr. Adley if the 24th works.
Is that
So we can-
evening, I assume?
Pardon?
Evening?
Yes.
Yes, it would be a special meeting, so it's a
And
7
then
o'clock start.
you're talking about having the one-to-one discussion at another meeting?
No, I'm just talking about, I don't think honestly, I don't know that we're going to be able to squeeze in 2 meetings, but I was thinking of doing those 2 topics on that 1 meeting.
Right.
At regular board time, meeting time?
I would say 7 because it's a special meeting.
7, okay.
And I would ask, we covered a lot more questions here on open choice, but we didn't get in any more
Right.
questions on one-on-one. So any other additional questions come up on one-on-one, just email them into us. So we can.
Yeah, if you have any questions that come out of tonight that on your way home or otherwise, send them in as soon as you can.
And I think just to clarify, your goal is also to do a survey. So to
Yes.
bring some
Yeah.
data to the table. So that gives him a little time frame, the administration to do that. Right. Good. We'll move on to item 8, action items, personal items, appointment, resignations, and retirements. Ms. Sion?
So again, we continue to see resignations in the middle of the year, and I'll just take one quick minute. You notice that there were 2 paraprofessionals who resigned. I know that there had been chatter in the community that we were somehow dragging our feet to replace paraprofessionals. You can see that we've hired immediately. There's already been an English teacher hired to replace Mr. Miller for the rest of the year. The science teacher at the high school is being covered internally right now by our teachers and department chairs so that the kids are prepared for exams. And the literacy interventionist, that's one of those 1-year positions that are in the grant. So they're going to go away next year. So I'm not sure that how successful we will be finding a literacy interventionist, which is a shortage position just for a long-term sub.
Any questions on the PAR?
You
Mrs.
can,
McCammon?
I'm sorry, Marge, I just didn't hear the very last sentence you said. I'm not sure how successful.
So the
we'll be.
literacy interventionist is a shortage area position, and this position ends at the end of the year because it's being paid through the grant. So we're going to do our best, and I know that Chris and Julie have already begun to look, but that one may be a tough one to fill.
Thank you.
You have a motion to approve the PAR as presented?
Just a question.
Yes,
Just a
Mr.
question
Murray.
on that.
Sure.
Since that is school specific, do we have a process or plan in place to cover the shortage in that school?
They're working on that now.
We have a motion to approve the PAR. Mr. Brown, second by Mrs. Achman. Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous, including our friends on Zoom. Michelle, we will turn it back over to you to public comment.
Okay, we'll do Zoom only as there's no one in person. Miss Nicole Lyons, you are unmuted and recognized.
Ms. Lyons, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's Nicole Lyons, up 63 Relihan Road. I just wanted to address something that's not sitting well with me, which is when Dr. Adley, that you would think that there are parents who are opposed to a DEI initiative. There may be, but I would be shocked if that was actually the case. I think that where there is concern is about the implementation of this initiative and the choice of consultant for this initiative. But I really am saddened to think, and I hope you don't believe, that there would ever be parents who are planning in any way to work against a final decision when it is made. And so I wanted to share my personal thoughts on that. And of course, I can't speak for all parents, but I feel very strongly that the only opposition is to the choices that were made about this DEI particular implementation. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Appreciate it.
Susie Flaherty, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, Mrs. Flaherty.
Hi again. Sorry about earlier. I was told that I could raise my hand a second time, but I understand the time constraints you guys have. You've done an amazing job tonight. There's just a couple things that I am just moved to say. And the first one would be that I have every confidence in Dr. Adley to steer our ship in the right direction. And while some may not agree with the appointment of Ken Shelton. He's experienced, he's educated, he is involved with our kids and our teachers now, and our kids need someone now. We cannot afford to wait any longer. I don't see the reason to wait. Secondly, I don't understand this obsession that Rowayton seems to have with joining the Darien Public School community. It's just as likely that no one from Rowayton will apply as it is that we get 5 applicants chosen from the lottery in open choice for Darien Public Schools. I don't know why that's even being used as an example of, and if that's the case, then great, they get to come to Darien schools if that's what they choose. But we're not going to get 5 kids from Rowayton. And if we do, it's just as likely that we don't. And thirdly, I just really completely lost my train of thought. I don't remember what the last one was. What's that? And I just really want to say one more thing. Open choice is Connecticut's plan. And yes, Hartford is the capital of Connecticut. So yes, Connecticut's plans come from Hartford. And I think it's suspect for anyone to label it a Hartford plan as if it's not for the children of Connecticut. It is. And we have to remember that there's no difference. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it isn't for you and for the betterment of our children's education. Thanks so much again. I'm so impressed with all of you. And I really look forward to hopefully open choice being put forward. And more importantly, at this point, the DEI initiative to give our kids some hope that we are listening to them. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Flaherty.
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating in public comment and sticking with us. Thank you, everyone, for the good discussion this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. McCammon, second.
There's somebody with their hand raised.
Yep, someone pop it up while you were speaking, Mr. Deneen.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
User Lulia Gluck Herrera, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me time. I'm a mom of, I'm an immigrant, and I just want to say that there's been a lot of emotional discussion, and kind of was accused that a lot of parents was accused that they want to stay in some bubble, and there is no diversity, but it's simply not true. My neighbors from Morocco and from Jamaica and from India and from Russia and from Brazil, and we are living here in Darien. And I'm personally never felt unwelcome in this town. And there's a lot of kids from different countries. My daughter is not native speaker English and English speaker, sorry, like I am. For me, it's kind of challenging to speak aloud in front of a lot of people. So I just want to advocate for Darien residents who was accused that they are closed for another people. They try to stay in some bubble. It's not true, because people from Darien were welcome, were friendly, and were acceptable for exactly for me, for example. I've never felt anything only but good from parents, my daughter's class. That's only what I want to say, that people won't try to put diversity as, please look around, that there is diversity right now already. Just please acknowledge that.
Thank you very much for speaking. Thank you for staying with us.
Can I have her address, please?
Your address, please?
Oh, sorry. 137 Hello Tree Ridge Road.
Great. Thank you. Have a good evening. I have a motion to adjourn. Mrs. McCammon, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.